Welcome everyone to episode 21 grams of real time. My name is Ryan, and with me as always is the Sean Penn to my Danny Houston, Robbie. Robbie, how you doing?
Are you really Danny Houston? Okay, we're going with that one. Yep.
To be fair, neither of us are Benicio del Toro.
That's true. That's also very true.
So I was kind of like, he's the next one in line.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
so that'll work.
And I'm happy. Wow, am I happy about being Sean Penn? Yeah, it's fine.
He's older than Danny Houston, so I was like,
yeah, fair enough.
That'll work.
I go with that.
Just quickly, I was going to go 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
But
yeah, okay, yeah, I can see why you wouldn't.
The original one, I probably wouldn't have gone because of obvious reasons, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, but then there's the new version, obviously.
Yeah, but neither of us are Jonah Hill or Channing Tatum.
That is also true.
So,
yeah.
and I could have gone 21.
Yes.
And neither of us are Kevin Spacey as well.
Yeah. Also, neither are so Asian, so...
That as well.
Yeah, because that was whitewashed, that movie. You know that story? Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. We digress. It was quite hard finding one this time, so that one worked.
That worked really well.
Yeah,
I'm glad with that.
Like I said, I originally had 21 Jump Street, then what's happened.
Yeah, we'll get to that shortly. Yeah. But all those are very relevant.
Yeah. Anyway, starting off with stuff that we've got to talk about from the last episode.
Starting where we finished last episode.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So we talked about Cobra Kai and how we're going to watch Karate Kid. We've since done that 2 days ago now, before this record. So Cobra Kai's 20 episodes so far of the 2 seasons drew nearly 2.2 billion streaming minutes in just its first 7 days on Netflix, from August 31st to September 6th, according to the Nielsen streaming charts.
That is... unfathomable.
That's mental.
No wonder Netflix were immediately like, yep, 3 and 4 is not a question. They just knew, they knew what they were getting into. They were just like, this is rating so... like, we know it's going to rate so well. And
I reckon before... Well, when 3's in the can, they'll probably go, yep, 5, 6 now. Yeah. Go, here's the money. Do what you want.
Oh, it's nuts. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last time, but where it's going to end up. Like, this is obviously going to have an impact on the industry, and people are going to start looking at other things. And there's a trailer that we will talk about later on that's revisiting an old franchise too. But it's like, how many other things are going to be revisited in this sort of fashion because of Cobra Kai? I never, as we talked about last week, I never would have expected this when I saw the first, well, not even the whole first season, like the first 4 episodes on YouTube. I never would have expected it to have blown up into this thing. I thought it was good, but never did I expect it to be this good. You know?
I think now, because of Netflix, it's more sort of readily available, as opposed to on YouTube Red, where people are like, we don't really want to fork out for another streaming service.
Yeah, especially one that at the time YouTube only had a very limited selection. Yeah. And this was part of the appeal of them trying to grow more of a market. Ironically, being a Sony-based production originally, back in the day, that would have been on Crackle, which was like one of the first ever digital streaming platforms. It was like, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago now.
Do you guys remember Crackle?
I mean, it's still around.
Yeah.
But, you know...
Good on you for crackling Crackle.
There was stuff on Crackle I actually watched. It was free for a while. Like, it was a free platform. I remember watching... was it Starving? And it was David Faustino from Married with Children and Cora Nemec from... Parker Lewis. I was about to get those two confused again.
And also Stargate SG-1.
And Stargate SG-1, but the reason being that they were all washed up actors based on the original 90s shows that they were on. And they were struggling actors still trying to stay relevant. And it was a really clever kind of meta series. These days, it was very ahead of its time. These days, it would be very much par for the course, but whenever that came out, like 13, 14 years ago, I think it might have been, it was very much ahead of the game. That sort of meta celebrity narrative, playing versions of themselves, and kind of at a piss take, and they ring in like other people they knew, famous people from either the shows they were on or other people they actually knew, to basically belittle them and treat them like crap on screen. Like I think the first episode starts with David Faustino trying to get Ed O'Neill to lend him some money.
It almost kind of sounds like Ricky Gervais extras.
Kind of, yeah, but it's still before that, maybe 4 or 5 years before that. It
sounds very similar from what you're describing to me.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, we're digressing. But anyway, it's one of those things where YouTube, it was never going to get that audience, and this has obviously done the business for it. It's made sure that everyone's aware of it, and the fact that it rated so well and how much was watched. That's just still an enormous amount. 2.2 billion minutes.
We should have looked up like the week before we did this record to see if it's gone up. But
well, that was just the first 7
still
days.
Quite high.
Yeah, I'd say it's still rating extremely well. And
I
have heaps of people when I've watched it can't rave enough about it, really. So
no. Another thing to follow up on the small list. The day after our last record, Disney announced Soul was taken off the cinema release schedule and set for December 25th, or Christmas Day, for those of you unaware, for release on Disney+.
Yeah, it was funny because we talked about this, because the rumour was pre-announcement that both Black Widow was going to get delayed and this was going to go to Disney Plus by the end of the year, and then they announced the Black Widow delay, but they didn't announce this, and then literally, yeah, as you just said, the day after we recorded last time, they went, oh yeah, it's happening now. I was like, oh damn, yeah, we're just talking about this. So yeah, I mean,
it happens too frequently to us. We talk about something in an episode, and then the next day something comes out about it, and we're like, I
kind of waited. There'll be something in this episode. It just is what it is, but it means we can come back to it like this. And just, I mean, this is still timely. It's not out until Christmas, so it's fine. It's not like, oh, that's out now, and like, oh crap,
exactly. Yeah, we've missed that announcement.
There was a new trailer, which again we'll talk about a little bit later on. So I probably won't say anything more really for now, and we should move on to the next bit of news.
Yep. There was a discussion as well in our last episode about Cineworld, Regal, and AMC cinemas.
Yeah.
The US.
So it was Cineworld and Regal, but we did talk about AMC. But the AMC is the US largest cinema chain. We did touch on this last episode, but it was to do with the fact that Cineworld Regal, which is the second largest in the United States and also is like the biggest in Europe, was closing cinemas down for like basically couldn't keep themselves running, and were going to close for the foreseeable coming months of the rest of the year, I think it was. So in the US, obviously AMC's been the largest, and it has about 1,000 cinemas and over 10,000 screens worldwide, with half in the US and Canada of that total amount. Has warned it will be depleted of its cash, like its cash values, by either the end of this year or the early start of next year. Wow. With the current situation in the US lacking film screenings, unused screens, and many cinemas still closed due to COVID itself. So the company's over 100 years old, and it's struggling to see a possible outcome that doesn't see it selling assets and closing locations if other options can't be optioned or opened, which is a big deal. We've seen stuff here locally, like cinemas, because they've got screen space, have been like literally saying, do you want to come put that video game or that movie you want to see on a personal screen? You and 30 friends.
You supply the console, we'll supply the screen.
Yeah, exactly. You and 30 friends can do this on a big screen, in a cinema. It's like, well, that's a great idea, but we can do that because we haven't really got the COVID limitations. You can't do that in the States. Like, you can't do that in the UK.
One thing they've started doing here, which they kind of did infrequently, is that they've started playing rugby games on the big screen as well,
and
or other sports as well, which is a good idea as well. I mean, you could just be at home with a family watching a game, and you go, it's pretty boring sitting here, and then, you go to a cinema and watch sports. It's like you're almost being there with other people who will be in the crowd in attendance as well.
Yeah,
obviously there's a crowd.
Obviously, it doesn't work very well if the sport game is in the location where you are. You're not going to bother going to cinema when you could just go to the stadium. But if it's an international thing, but then I guess like a COVID thing's got an impact on how many international events.
Of course.
But a lot of those things as well. It's a case of you pay a set price for like 30 people, and you also get like popcorn and drinks or ice creams and stuff. So I'm just gonna. You pay a flat fee, and you and all your friends come along, and you'll get given popcorn or drinks or ice creams or whatever it is for a set fee. And I think as an idea, like if you were to do a birthday party or something,
for sure,
great idea. But yeah, that's not going to solve AMC's issues.
No, and I think we've talked about this as well. Is that with all your streaming content out there now, I think cinemas are just going to take a hit anyway. Like people are going to wait for you've got movies that are just bypassing. Like even pre-COVID, you got movies that are bypassing cinemas and going to a streaming.
Well, yeah, we've been talking about that. We've been talking about that narrowing window of cinema exclusivity. But I mean, this may be the death knell of certain amount of cinemas, especially the existence of like mass market cinemas. You're still going to have cinemas. The numbers aren't going to be there. Maybe some people will just never go back to going to cinemas. They've got to this taste of just like, I can just see stuff at home, and the studios are willing to just put them out video on demand straight away. Yeah. There's no point at that point for some of them. I mean, I can understand it. We were talking about this. I mean, Mulan, movie wasn't that great, but it still made the precedent point that if you paid $40 even for it as a premium release because it just came out, if you're a family of 2 or 3 kids and the 2 adults, and you've got to contribute, parking and food and all that sort of stuff, $40 is cheap.
Yeah,
you're not spending all the amount that you would spend going to the cinema and all that sort of stuff. Petrol, parking, if you've got to pay for parking,
and you could get pretty much all of that other food somewhat cheaper at a supermarket as well if you wanted to do it.
You would. That's it. I was about to say that exactly, which is you just prep what you wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, you want popcorn? Yeah, cool. Let's just buy the bag popcorn, or make fresh popcorn, or microwave popcorn, or
exactly.
You want candy? Cool. The bags are fucking half the price that they, a quarter of the price that they are at the supermarket. So it's just one of those things. I think that's where I wanted to go with this. Is literally, the impact of this will be yet to be seen, but it's pretty dire. Like, that's a huge.
And I think if
the two biggest companies in the world that deal with cinema marketing,
and I think these days, like now, we'll probably only get like really major summer blockbusters, which would probably draw the crowds back, and people will just be like, "Nah, I'll wait till it comes online."
I think the other thing we got to think about this, and we talked about this in a previous episode, was the fact that obviously there used to be this legislation, especially in the United States, where distribution companies couldn't own the cinemas.
Yeah.
It could be a case where this will be looked upon as the way to save this, is that the distribution companies start buying these cinemas in order to have their own chains.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if that's... I mean, it's a thing. Yeah, it's going to save cinemas that are open. It's going to create some jobs. But at the same time, is that going to be good for the overall industry and how movies are marketed and released? Like, is it only going to create more of a stranglehold for independent films not to be able to get into mass market because they don't have that foothold anymore? And it's just, and then the cinemas are just like mainstream stuff, and then you basically, your choice is to stream stuff at home that's mass market, go to the cinemas and watch mass market, and have barely anywhere to go see anything else, which isn't really a good outcome either. But again, way much rambling on something that we don't know what's going to happen next.
No, just watch this space.
We'll talk again about it another time, no doubt.
Also, we mentioned last episode that Tatiana Maslany says that she hasn't been cast as She-Hulk, even though there was many places said that she was. The story spread everywhere, and even as we mentioned last episode, Mark Ruffalo had messaged his support, which, all right, that's fair.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of half and half in this. It's like, are Disney trying to downplay this, and they're trying to like hush it up and say that she isn't?
I think she literally was asked herself about the role, and she was like, "Oh, I haven't actually been cast," and that was it. So
I wonder if it's kind of like Ewan McGregor saying, "If Star Wars ask you back, would you come back?" He's like, "Well, if they call me," and he was like in talks for like 4 years until the official announcement. I mean, so he's like just bullshitted everybody.
It could be that, but I think it's just more that they hadn't cast her in this, and it was just a rumor that caught very good traction.
And I think with COVID as well, I mean, it's probably going to be delayed.
That's true. The flip side of it as well is that she may have only been on the radar, but then because this got out in public and the public seemed generally really happy about it, all of a sudden that's the thing that sways Disney.
Yeah, they'll probably go, well, actually, let's audition her, or
let's bring her in, or because we already had her on the list, but let's make her a priority because the internet seemed quite happy with that idea. I mean, that doesn't always work out, but generally. Can't be a bad thing, but we'll see. Eventually the casting will happen. We'll hear if it's her or if it's someone else. So the show's happening. So touching on hopefully this will be our ending of Uncharted. No, it's not, because we're going to end up talking about the trailer. And
that's true. Oh yeah, I'll give you that. So there will be trailer. Okay, talking more of Uncharted news, because that seems to be the tradition the last episodes.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg, without a mustache, for playing Sully in Uncharted. He has now shown pictures of him with one in a makeup trailer.
Yeah. There's also an image of a shirt hanging that looks like the ones that Sully, the character of Sully in the games, would wear in front of like a cigar sitting in an ashtray, which again, he smokes cigars.
He always has them,
The mustache.
I'm unsure how I feel about it. I hope that that's not the real mustache in the movie.
I don't know. It was weird because we had this whole thing last episode where we talked about like people were like, "Oh, why has he not got a mustache? It's just Mark Wahlberg." And then when you see him with a mustache, everyone's like, "Ugh."
Yeah,
it's lit right.
It kind of looks like not really one of those $2 ones you get from like a dress up shop, but kind of slightly better one.
I mean, his hair
it still looks cheap.
It still looks kind of cheap. I think it's also because we're not used to seeing him with such a thick, bushy mustache.
Possibly that.
Because his actual facial hair is not that thick. It's a bit more wispy, and he has had roles where he's had like longer beards and stuff like that. But it's definitely more wispy as his actual natural hair growth. So it looks very odd to have him with this bushy mustache. So yeah, the internet wasn't happy when they didn't have it, but now they're not happy when they does have it. I don't know. I mean, it's a photo off a phone in a makeup trailer that's brightly lit. I'll give it a pass until we see it in actual cinema.
Yeah, we'll have to see it in a teaser or a proper
like what
picture.
It's going to look like in its actual cinematography with proper lighting and that sort of stuff. Maybe it'll look fine. I mean, he had the slick back here again. It was in a style very much like Sully. There was also an official image of Tom Holland on set, which was released, which looked actually really good, except for the fact he wasn't half tucked in. His shirt wasn't half tucked in, like Nate Drake in the game usually is, which is kind of funny. It's like this weird quirk that's always been in there. I don't think it was in all of them, but it was in the first few. But the style looks very much in this thing, and he even has the ring
and the necklace. Yeah, it was a nice little touch. As well.
Yeah. So, and he's a little bit bruised, a little bit scarred, a little bit dirty. So that was really good. Nolan North, who's the voice actor for Drake, and he's actually, well, I shouldn't say voice actor, he's actually the performance actor, because he also does all the performance stuff in the thing. So I guess he's just the actor. He visited the set.
He's the animation actor, I suppose you could say.
And voice, yeah. So, like, he's the character. Speaking via the internet during the recent Armageddon Expo here in Auckland, he was positive about the film and the casting, talking about how he saw the actors as the characters. I mean, he compared Mark Wahlberg to the fact that he's from Boston, and the actor that plays Sully in the games, he's also from Boston, and he has a bit of a Bostonian accent. Nolan North also from the region, so he he's like, I think that's a boon. Like, I think I could see him as that young Sully. And to be fair, taking away the quality of the mustache, once you put him on him and he had the hair slicked back, I was like, yeah, he kind of looks like the young Sully in the video game. I was like, you know what, that's actually slightly more passable. But some people were like, no, it still looks like Mark Wahlberg just now with the mustache. He's now put a video online, Nolan North has now put a video online, basically saying all the things I saw him say live at Armageddon. So you can watch that. It's like about 45 minutes or an hour long, and just talking about how cool it is to have this movie, what his thoughts are, and going visiting the set. And so you can go check that out online. You just look up his I don't think it's on Retro Replay. It might be on his actual personal thing, but anyway, you can just find him on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. The film itself has wrapped its main shoot at the end of October, so it literally just about a week ago or so. This is probably the last we're going to have to talk about it for a while. For
a while, hopefully. At least until the new year, I'd say.
Yeah, until we see a trailer or some posters, unless something else happens between now and then.
And I was going to say, just jump in there on the Nolan North thing, since he visited the set, I'd say he's probably going to be like Guy with Gun number 7 or something. He's going to have a bit part somewhere.
I would. There's
or
two things
like Barman or something.
Two things I expect. One, he'll appear in it somewhere, and if he doesn't get a line of dialogue somewhere, they'll loop him in somewhere in the background, just for a nod to having his voice in there as well.
Yeah.
Because he talked about that. I will go to the side. He talked about the fact that obviously at one point a few years ago he was in so many games that all came out at the same time. It wasn't really planned that way, and how like he was just everywhere. And most of these people that he could definitely do different voices, but it just so happened that all these roles were roles where the casting directors or the people in the making the games had asked him to use his natural voice or something close to it, and so all of a sudden his voice was like everywhere, and everyone's like, this guy has no range, he can't do anything. And apparently he said that there was it was the casting for Batman Arkham City during the Penguin that really changed that people actually heard that and went, oh wow, he can actually
do different voices. I
just thought he always sounded the same. So, and obviously other things that he's done that people didn't realize was him, which also led to an anecdote where someone asked him if there's sometimes roles he forgets he even did
because of it.
Because he just does so many things sometimes, and he was like, yeah, I chucked in this game during lockdown, and it was like Sniper or something. And there was like the introduction thing is like this gruff military guy, and he starts talking, and I was like, oh, that sounds really... Oh, wait, that's me.
Well, I suppose if you're as busy as he is, then you're probably bound to not know what you're doing or forget what you're doing.
Forget what you've done, do so many things. So, that was pretty funny. Moving sideways in video game related thing, last episode as well, we talked about Mortal Kombat 11 and how they'd had the voice actors, also the actors from the original movie do voices for the characters, and we also went on this path about talking about how there was all these famous characters from movies, like they had Robocop and Terminator and Alien and Predator and stuff. They added another one just after we talked, funnily enough, and it's just come out as a new DLC. Sylvester Stallone as Rambo, basically. And it's actually him doing it's his likeness from First Blood, I think.
Yeah, I think so. One of the early ones, at least. The early ones,
and it's actually him doing the voice as opposed to
the sound-alike.
The sound-alike, which they did for Terminator, which Schwarzenegger picked, and that was not a good choice.
Yeah, because I think in some of the videos I saw, it's Rambo taking on Terminator as well.
Yes, yeah.
So it's kind of like that
they always
joke of the rivalry between...
They do, and they also have, like, they put lines of dialogue in that reference the fact that there's some self-awareness to the joke about what you're in. Yeah. Like movie characters and things, and they make jokes about those sorts of things, or references, like, you know, obviously Terminator keeps saying stuff like, you're terminated, or we're going to terminate you, and stuff like that. I haven't heard the Rambo ones, but I can't even remember. I assume they'll be very similar. Like, really similar to the others.
Yeah, we on hindsight, we probably should have looked it up before doing this so we could talk about it, but...
Yeah, but it's still there. It's just a continuation. And they've been doing this for a long time on these games. Yeah, so it's not too much surprise.
No. We also had a question last episode of who wanted Borat 2 after 15 years. Apparently everybody. As the film is already the second highest streaming movie of 2020 behind Hamilton on Disney+.
Yeah.
Not to think that Borat's on Disney Plus, because that wouldn't be. It's just Hamilton is on Disney Plus.
Hamilton was
don't
on
get
Disney.
that confused.
Borat's on Amazon Prime, or Amazon Video. Hamilton has had the biggest uptick as soon as it launched. Borat is second only to it, but obviously we're only so far into the year, so by the end of the year,
it's only been out a week or so.
Week or a week and a half.
Yeah.
No, hang on, it's been a bit longer than that, about 2 weeks. But that's still impressive. That clearly gave the answer when we said, I wonder who's still interested in this, when we talked about this last episode. Everyone, it seems. I still haven't seen it, but I will watch it very shortly.
I think the recent election probably helped pique interest as well, I'd imagine.
I think that, and also, without spoiling it, because I'm not going to talk about it in case people do want to see it, but there's the thing that came out in the news that's related to the late part of the movie that has to do with a certain political associated figure / lawyer. Who's in the movie, and that I think got a lot of conversation and dialogue and press, and that got people watching too. And I think in hindsight that would probably help them so much. But I won't go down that path. If you watch it, you know what I'm talking about. If you've read the news, you may have seen it anyway because clips are online anyway. If you hadn't seen it, but having talked to a couple of people who have seen it, they're just like, I can't believe that, it's ridiculous. But yeah.
And finally, wrapping up stuff from the last episode, there's been a lot, so if you're still bearing with us, keep on bearing.
Yeah.
So finally, we have 3 more chances to get Fast and Furious sponsorship for the show, as after Slow 9,
as we're calling it,
is finally released. The plans are to make 2 more final Fast and Furious flicks, 10 and 11, both to be directed by Justin Lin again. 11 seems like an odd number to end on, don't you think?
It is an odd number to end on. No, but it is. I won't be surprised. I think we talked about this off air, but earlier. But I won't be surprised if it's not 10-11. It's like 10 Part 1 and 10 Part 2.
Yeah.
Just to, or like Fast and Furious, the saga ends or something. Something silly. Part 1, Part 2. Just to go back on this, we joked last episode about the idea of getting ourselves sponsored and saying Fast and Furious presents real time, blah blah blah. Which is why we've only got 3 more chances. That was a silly thing. I should have explained that earlier in the description. But yeah. It wasn't a surprise because I remember them saying they were only planning to make 10, and obviously if they've got this grand idea and it needs to go to a big culmination of something, obviously they've realised, it's too big for just one movie, so now it can't be 10 anymore, it has to be 11. But it is weird to finish on it's such a weird thing to say they're going to finish on an odd number. Usually they either finish on like a round number or an even number.
I suppose in a way you could technically say that it'll be 12 if you count for Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, but but that's the other thing. They're planning on making other more spin-offs anyway. Maybe not just Hobbs and Shaw, but other spin-offs. There's been discussion for a while about Michelle Rodriguez's character Letty getting her own spin-off, and so I would be surprised if it's definitely not going to be the last of the Fast and Furious films as far as the franchise goes, because it makes way too much money for Universal to not start throwing money around to make some other spin-offs until they stop making money. But I mean, that's it. I mean, if what we're jokingly calling Slow 9 because of how long it's taking to come out does well, and I'm sure it will, I can't see it not, then it'd be a no-brainer really to make 2 more.
Fast 10 your seatbelts.
Fast 10, that's as we called it last episode as well.
Right, moving on to proper news.
Other news.
Yep. Christopher Nolan is happy about the performance of Tenet, everything considered. The movie has made around $350 million worldwide at this stage. He had harsher words to say for studios not adapting to other options, even though streaming seems like one. Probably just not one Nolan likes. For getting new films out there to people. The WB parent company AT&T and the CEO of the company said that the experience of releasing Tenet wasn't exactly a home run.
In quotes, yeah. A home run, in quotes.
Yeah. The movie will be arriving on home formats and streaming on December 15th.
Yeah, it was interesting. Nolan's comments are a little bit like, it was like, oh yeah, no, I'm not worried, everything considered, that's actually pretty good, 350 million, blah, blah, kind of, that's what they were asking him. But then, yeah, he went on this thing about, like, cinemas need to think about other ways to release it. I mean, obviously, like, stuff like drive-in cinemas and other releasing formats is one thing. But
they certainly definitely picked up during lockdown and COVID and all that.
Exactly, and probably still are in the States, although obviously, as we talked about last episode, just depending on what it must be like in some states during the winter, you probably can't do it so easily. But yeah, I don't know what he expects, what cinema's going to do in other places. Like, I think streaming is the answer, and obviously he's a big person for film and likes the cinema experience and likes seeing it in big screens, and that's definitely got its place. Don't get me wrong, we plenty too much talked about this, but right now other options are not going to cinemas and watching from home, and he just has to accept that, I think, and that there's going to be plenty of people, I reckon, on December 15th that'll be seeing Tenet for the first time that didn't go to cinemas and see it. And I'm sure it'll be successful. I don't doubt that they'll market it correctly, and people who went, oh yeah, I didn't get to see that in cinemas, I'm happy to, download it now, stream it, buy it on disc or whatever they will do it, and there'll be a whole bunch of new stuff about Tenet coming out at that time. But
and it may do better.
It might be extra money that they just didn't expect. It does really well in the video demand and streaming and rentals,
and hopefully with like the Blu-ray releases, we can fully understand it more. Because I mean, we want to see it again. I mean, I'll probably may get the chance to see it for work before it comes out on release.
Depends if how quickly it gets to
I can probably definitely freeze frame it and rewind quickly and go frame by frame with stuff.
Cool, you'll be able to tell me what happened.
Yeah, we'll be able to figure it out, and we may have a better review that's kind of spoiler filled, maybe even if we figure it out.
Maybe part of, if we do another year end thing, maybe part of that year end thing we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
That will be early next year.
Yeah. Now, Apple has continued its ownership of the Peanuts brand. I assume this isn't the food. It's like Charlie Brown and Snoopy Peanuts.
Yes.
After they funded new content back in 2018 on the franchise, they now seem to have purchased the entire back catalogue of the characters and are putting the specials on Apple TV. This marks the end of an era in US TV, as for the past 50 plus years, it has been on public TV, with ABC
been screening
the past 20 years. Of the holiday specials between Halloween, Great Pumpkin, Thanksgiving, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and Christmas, Charlie Brown Christmas until now.
Yeah. It's a big deal. Like, I saw a lot of people, like, I think it's one of those things, people forget how, like, embedded in nostalgia some things are when they're around, like, every year, right? So there's that whole thing about It's a Wonderful Life and all that stuff on American TV. Charlie Brown Christmas and Thanksgiving and and Great Pumpkin are those things. They're touchstones. They're just on every year, and people just expect them, whether or not they tune into them or they want to tune into them or they want to put them on for their kids. They're just there.
It's a generational thing for sure.
Exactly, and all of a sudden they're not there. I mean, I think they're still free if you have access to Apple TV. You can just watch them. It doesn't cost you any money. But still, the fact that they're there only and they're not being broadcast on public television is like a big deal. And so personally, I wouldn't know any different. Like, I've seen them all. They just randomly play on TV here or whatever, but we didn't have them every year.
Yeah, they're not something that you'd play here anyway.
Every time, especially Thanksgiving, there's no relevance to it. Yeah. But we could occasionally see the pumpkin special, the Christmas one would come on. But it wasn't like every year. And so I guess the idea of, but that's the thing, like I saw all these people online that saying, oh wow, it's such a change, like it's kind of a loss. Like, I can see why, but I mean, Apple owns the rights to your cool, but they could still just make it a tradition. Like, we're taking away the traditions and putting on their platform. It's like, what about people who don't have Apple platforms for Apple TV that want to watch Charlie Brown, at Christmas?
Yeah, they could still charge like ABC like a percentage fee or something to play at that time and still have it year round for
at the same slot, especially
to watch it.
Especially for something that they're still allowing people with Apple to watch for free. It's just Anyway. I can't say any more about it. I'm sure there's people, potentially listening that have much better say, who've been growing up with it for years and years and years as a thing in the United States, or maybe elsewhere in the world. But I just thought it was very interesting to see that. It kind of almost filled my one of my news feeds one day, the day that it was announced.
A Boston news anchor was fired from her job due to appearing as a role as a news anchor dressed up for Halloween in the recent Adam Sandler film Hubie Halloween. It was due to her contract not allowing her to do anything like this.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like, I can kind of see, like, her character dressed up, I think it was like Harley Quinn, and then she like does these news report kind of things, and then the stuff happens in the movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I did read enough about this. But like, I feel like, yeah, I can see there's obviously a contractual issue there, but I think the news agency should have erred on the side of just being like, hey, maybe just give her a slap on the wrist, say, hey, shouldn't have done this, and let her keep a job, because in the end it's still promotion. It's just, I think this has ended up making that news company, the news service or the local TV station look bad for firing someone for taking a role in a movie.
It's giving them the bad publicity.
Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. But
whereas they could have almost played it up and go, oh, our reporter such and such has got a small part in this new movie on Netflix.
Yeah, with Adam Sandler, it's really cool.
You know, like they could have played it up.
Yeah, but instead they didn't. And I mean, there might be something in the contract we don't know.
Yeah. And
she was relatively, on her, it became public because she admitted it. But she was very pragmatic about it. I did this, and it turned out that I shouldn't have done it in my contract, and I totally understand why I've been removed from my role, and so it's pretty crazy, I think, in some respects. But at least everyone was relatively realistic about it. But yeah, it was kind of funny that dominated the news for a day as well for some crazy reason.
According to The Hollywood Reporter, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II,
yes,
all reportedly signed on for Mad Max Fury Road prequel, Furiosa.
Yeah. This is the one we talked about before with Charlize Theron was like slightly disappointed that she couldn't come back to the role in a particular way. And we talked about the idea that maybe all of a sudden they'll have like her bookending the thing with her maybe voiceover or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically the cast. Nothing else has been said other than that, but that's what the Hollywood Reporters reported on. We'll probably find out more in the new year, because I assume that's when the planning will go ahead, as long as it doesn't get delayed like Fury Road did several times before it finally got to get filmed. So
yeah. Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds to be possibly teamed for an action-adventure romantic comedy. That's a mouthful. Lost City of D?
That's all it is.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you'd sort of missed out part of the description and
maybe
just
it's
copied.
Lost City of Dick.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 dots afterwards.
It's true.
Lost City of D.
It's described as in the style of things like Romancing the Stone.
Yeah, which makes sense. So that's why it's an action-adventure romantic comedy, because that's exactly what Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Nothing has been made official, but Paramount is hopeful to steal both of them for the role, especially Reynolds from his current run of Netflix films.
No doubt, yeah. Yeah, so that again was reported. That's what they were eyeing up. Neither have been signed up, but I couldn't resist the ridiculousness of putting them together in a romantic comedy action adventure, and the ability to put steel in there was kind of funny. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But obviously, people are kind of keen to see the two of them in another movie together. They were quite good together in he played their assistant, and that was The Proposal. That's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what the name of it was.
It's another pair of actors who work several times together. Another pair would be Sandra Bullock, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah,
they've worked together a lot.
I don't know if the two of them, these two, Bullock and Reynolds, have worked together more than that once.
No,
but they bounced off each other so well. Like obviously, they're both both, I guess, personality-wise, naturally themselves, but also the way that characters are written quite often quite smart and sharp. And so I think they are naturally both like that, and I think that's the kind of the reason why the two of them played off each other really well in that movie. And I could see in this sort of context, I'm thinking exactly like Romancing the Stone. That was the antagonistic kind of thing between these two people that ended up together in the end. Was like this kind of like, yeah, there's like a bit of a at each other, but it's kind of also funny, and they're quippy, and they're fast, and they're responsive to each other, and they make good reactions and stuff. Yeah. And I can see this.
I definitely in the last few movies I've seen Sandra Bullock, and she's been quite quick off the mark. In Ocean's 8, sorry, Ocean's 8 was like very much like that. Yeah. She's very quippy, and Ryan Reynolds, well,
yeah,
it's Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. Do we need to say
I refuse to put them in there because there was just so much, but there was a whole bunch of stuff to do with Ryan Reynolds' birthday. I don't know if you saw Blake Lively. Ryan Reynolds doesn't want cakes for his birthday. He doesn't like cake, so he wanted a pie. So she put birthday candles in a pie and presented it to him. It was so weird. It was kind of funny. And then there was a whole thing because he's never voted in the American elections before because he's Canadian, obviously.
That's right. I think I did see that.
Yeah, this is like the first time. So there was a whole bunch of really weird, funny tweets around voting and his birthday and pies. So I didn't want to put that in there, but it's just come to mind as we're talking about Ryan Reynolds and saying weird, quirky, or doing weird, quirky stuff. But anyway, yes. We should move on.
Yeah.
Last episode we talked about the Resident Evil franchise, and so I think we talked about the fact that Netflix is screening both a live action TV series and an animated series, and there's also going to be another live action movie through the same company that made the older ones.
Yeah, which we talked about previously.
Yeah, but Netflix is not content with just helping make both animated and live action Resident Evil series with Capcom. Now they're teaming up with Ubisoft, who's another game developer, for a live action Assassin's Creed TV series. Hopefully it'll be more successful than the live action film that came out a few years back with Michael Fassbender. I think Fassbender's probably still going to be attached to this because I think one of the agreements with that film was that he was like an associate producer and his production company was involved, and I guess they kind of had the rights to help Ubisoft, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets attached to this like in a producer or executive producer role.
Or it pops up somewhere as like a different character cameo sort of thing maybe.
Or even still the character he played in the movie. Like, there's no reason to not make the series completely new. You could still attach it, because I think, and people probably who know better than me would be able to correct it, but I think his character and the situation in the movie is actually canon to the video games. It was made, when they wrote it, it was intentionally to be just another like assassin side story that was happening in the real world of this. And so I guess if it still exists, if they haven't said that doesn't exist anymore in the games, and I guess there's no reason for them really not to, because it's kind of so side adjacent, I guess, to the main stories, that they could still have it in that same universe. It wouldn't make any difference. And so you could have his character or references to that come up and it would still make sense, I guess. But I think the thing that you and I both talked about with that movie is the fact that like it was like 80% modern times, or like 75%, and the rest was the back in the past. And I think that's the bit you got to reverse. You got to be more like the games. I think more historical stuff, less modern. Or even a balance of 50-50 maybe.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen it myself yet, or at all, but one day I kind of plan on seeing it, because I am a somewhat fan of the games. I've only really played one of them, but that's neither here or neither.
You got like 20 others to catch up on.
But yeah, so if this does go ahead, I'll probably watch the movie and just see what my opinions of it.
Oh, well, I do have it, so if you do want to watch it, do feel free to ask. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It just wasn't a great movie either. It just kind of, like, if I was going to put it on that level of like of video game films, it's fine. It's perfectly acceptable action movie. There's some good moments in it. There's some really like what the hell moments, and it's not going to be groundbreaking, but you're not going to walk away going, "Oh, it was horrible and I hated it." It's just not going to thrill you either. You're not going to walk away, that was the best thing I've ever seen. So, there's some good ideas in it. Let me get it that way, and good intent, I guess, because the whole thing about that, it was just trying to make something new of the video game film and trying to, I think, this was Ubisoft doing it themselves in their own internal studio, and I think that's part of this partnership with Netflix, is that it's still part of their studio structure, that they've built a company within the game company. Is they're more of an entertainment company to make video content, and they've actually made Assassin's Creed short films for the games like that have been around them, and they're actually really good. They're actually really cool. So it's more of that sort of stuff, and I think they get that approach right, and they get it more like those short films. It may be a watch, who knows? We'll find out.
The Meg is to get a sequel film with Jason Statham returning, as it's got another job. That's good.
It's got jobs.
To be directed by Ben Wheatley.
Ben Wheatley, yeah.
Ben Wheatley. Now, before people ask why, the original made over $530 million worldwide and is based on a series of books, originally of which there is 7 titles in the series.
Yeah, I didn't know this. I
didn't know this either.
I put a little shrug emoji because I was like, when I saw the first one, I had no idea it was even based on anything. I just thought it was like, oh, it's a shark movie. It was like a mega shark movie. But yeah, it's based on a series of books. I never knew that. But yes, $530 million is probably a good reason as to why.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I haven't seen it either, so I can't really go why.
Again, it was fine. It was
it's no Jaws.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Well, kind of is, but it's bigger Jaws.
It's bigger Jaws, giant Jaws. I mean, the thing is, it gets some things really right, and I do like the style of it. But I just it also was sometimes a bit silly, and people were just disappointed that Jason Statham didn't punch the shark in the face.
Yeah. Or try to do like a barrel flip over it.
Yeah,
with a bomb strapped to the bottom.
Well,
of the car
they've got a what a twist. What's a real twist? They've got a chance here in the sequel now for him to punch a shark in the face or strap a bomb to a car and flip it into a shark.
I suppose the question is, will they come back here and film out west? Like they did with the first one, because that tank's still out there.
It is. I mean,
someone's got to use it.
I mean, if it works for the budget and they want to do it, and of course in a country where COVID's not as much of an issue, it seems like they probably would.
In 2 weeks.
They probably would. I mean, who knows? But we'll see. We'll see.
Like I said, I mean, there's a tank out there and out QMU not being used.
I think the thing we have to mention here as well is Ben Wheatley is supposed to be directing the new Tomb Raider movie. We talked about this in the last episode, and that was supposed to be filmed this year, but obviously COVID impacted it, and now they're talking about filming that next year, at the start of next year. So if this Meg sequel gets underway, it's not going to be anytime soon. It's going to be later next year at the earliest. So we probably won't hear anything more until it's made more official later next year.
Patrick Wilson is set to direct the next film in the Insidious franchise. What are they up to now, like 3, 4?
Oh god, I think it's like 5.
Oh wow,
I think
it's not even my sort of thing. But I knew there's a few.
Again, we should be looking this up beforehand. I knew you were gonna. Why did I know you were gonna ask this?
It's the next one. If you're a fan of Insidious, just know it's the next one, whatever they're up to.
I haven't, because there's also the spin. The reason why I get confused is there's the spin-off, like The Conjuring, all that. They're all part of that connected.
Oh, okay.
And Annabelle and all that. They're all part of that whole thing, and so I get them all confused. Or maybe they're not, but maybe they are, because I'm trying to think about this. And so because there's like some of them in the past, and some of them are modern, and then there's the spin-off. I have no idea what that franchise is. All I know is that I've seen one of them, and it was the second one. I didn't even see the first one. It was because it was at the movie marathon, and I was there with our friend Skip, and it was hilarious because I was like, whenever that came up, I was like, all right, in like 30 seconds, tell me what the first movie was about. And he like gave me a pretty good 30-second spiel about the movie. But what was funny is they had the opening scene of the movie, and then they gave you like a flashback narrative of what had happened in the previous movie anyway. And it pretty much matched up to what he told me. So it was really funny that he ended up. I was just like, afterwards, like, I'm sorry it made you do that. He was like, that's so good. It pretty much matched up.
I'm sure he'll get a good chuckle out of this when you listen to it, Skip.
Can I tell us a little side story about that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
That's really funny. Before I go back to Patrick Wilson, because I want to come back to that. But when we saw that movie, the end of the movie, you know how horror movies get to that intense crescendo of events going on. So we get past this big event, and then the movie gets on, and then the movie freezes. It's a digital copy, like a digital display drive. Movie freezes, and the lights, it goes black, and everyone's like, oh, like it's really like, but everyone kind of also was like, oh, because it was like past that intense thing. And then they go, I think it came over the thing saying, oh, it's going to be like a minute or two, we'll try and sort it out. And then they sorted it out, and then but when they started up again, the movie's back like 5 minutes, so we had to sit through the whole like intense bit again. But what was really funny was like after the second time we went through it, it went to like the black quietness, and you just hear someone in the audience just go, and everyone just cracks up laughing. It was very funny. You couldn't have timed it better. It was so good. I think Patrick Wilson is a great actor. I've seen him in so many varied things, and so for him to get the opportunity to direct something that he's been involved with just makes complete sense. If he's wanting to do directing, this seems like the perfect opportunity for him to do it. I don't think he's directed anything before, but I could be wrong. I haven't checked that up either, actually, to be honest. But in any case, I can see something that he's obviously had such a heavy involvement in, being such a sensible thing for him to get himself involved in on that level. Yeah,
well, it's always good when like main stars of a franchise tend to get more involved and become a director.
You have to have a certain level of confidence as well in a franchise that, yes, you know it, but it's different to then now, assuming you're still going to be in it, you're going to be in front of the camera and behind it, and that takes on another level as well. So it's a big ask in some ways, but obviously you've got to have the confidence for that, and your producers and everyone else who's working on the film has to be confident that you can take on that responsibility. You
were talking about how the movie froze and how that one person in the crowd went, again at the end. It reminded me of that time I went with you. It was 2011, I think it was, and we saw Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, yeah, the Del Toro produced horror movie with Katie Holmes.
I think we've told the story on here before, I can't remember.
Probably.
But, I think Skip knows this as well. But we went with our friend Andrew, and there was a bit where it was, ramping up to the tense part. And, of course, most people would probably knew it was coming, like, I generally kind of get scared sometimes, but I could tell something was coming. I was like, okay, I'm gonna brace myself.
Yeah.
So you were sitting on my left, Andrew was on my right, And then all of a sudden the jump scare happened and Andrew just grabbed my leg. And
I think
that made me jump.
He was going for I remember this. He was going for the
handrest. Yeah.
But the funny thing was, I'm exactly like you. I usually can tell when the jump scare's coming, and I could see that one coming. But I jumped, but not because of the jump scare, but because you jumped out of your seat.
Yeah, because Andrew grabbed my leg, so...
And you... Oh, God, I gave him so much crap. He had a tendency of doing stuff like this. I remember I was in Christchurch, I think I was with Skip as well, and he tried getting in the back seat of the car and sitting on Skip without looking. So, he just had this tendency to do weird things like that. I remember he was very apologetic about the whole thing, but it was hilarious.
You're probably giving Skip flashbacks now. He's like, no, Andrew.
No. That was pretty funny. It's weird how horror movies had that kind of appeal towards some people, and some people can't even watch them. And then, some of us can figure out when the jump scares mostly are going to come. Sometimes I still get me too, the same way. It's something that you don't expect, especially. But there's a certain style to jump scares that, especially with like either silence or a certain type of audio or the way it's framed or the circumstance, the situation you're in. Yeah, that kind of makes. But I guess you still kind of tense up because you're like, "Oh, is the jump scare going to happen? Is the jump scare going to happen?" Like,
and then you probably over tense yourself. As well, and then you still get scared by it.
You might, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. We should move on.
Yeah, we're digressing again. We keep doing this. We're so sorry. No, we're not. Olivia Wilde's latest film, Don't Worry, Darling, starring herself, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, and Florence Pugh, has had to shut down production due to a crew member testing positive for COVID. The film was shut down for 14 days until it could be made certain no one else was infected.
Yeah, I mean, pretty standard.
It seems to be, I won't say a tradition. It's not really a tradition. It seems to be... it's not a norm either. How can I word this? It just seems to be one of those things at the moment that...
We just have to accept. It's just a thing. It's a thing in of itself.
It's still there and it's not going away anytime soon.
I mean, that's the other part of it. I mean, most of the films now have like COVID production team. They have like people involved in case for COVID testing, for COVID safety policies, and for circumstances like this where a film gets to get shut down. And obviously, I guess as well, most companies are now putting a budget into this for the potential for this to happen.
Putting extra money in.
Because obviously that's 14 days where the movie shut down, and sure, some people may not get paid for those 14 days because they're not working, but other people are going to get paid right through regardless. So to put contingencies in for those sorts of things. Surprisingly, it's the only one I've heard in this last month or so.
I think one of the most recent ones that I think we talked about a few episodes ago, so probably a couple of months, was Jurassic Park Dominion.
But the COVID testing
that was one of the ones, so that closed down for a couple of weeks as well.
And there was obviously the Batman, which we didn't know if it was Robert Pattinson or
just a member of the crew that was unconfirmed.
Exactly. So I mean, they're few and far between, but it's obviously there, and I think most companies and film sets are being sensible about these sorts of things. So again, Olivia Wilde directing herself too there, by the way.
So it can't be easy. I mean, it'd be easier when you're not in the scene, I would imagine.
Yeah, of course.
Because, I mean, you'd have to be on set on your mark, and then you'd be like, action. And you'd be, oh, shit, it's me. You'd sort of,
especially the first line.
Especially if it's your first line as well, Well, maybe they just have the second DA.
Oh, you mean first AD?
The first AD, right. Sorry.
That's right. They might do doing the calls for you, so you can just be in the zone for the shot. Yep. And you just set up what you want to talk about beforehand. For sure. Yeah. Ron Howard, well known for things like Happy Days. He was a well-known film actor and film director. This is where we're going, but anyway, yes. Apollo 11 as well, and other things. Also, his daughter, also a well-known actress and director as well. It was kind of a segue there, going space. Well, this is why I brought that up. Going towards Star Wars. Directed Solo. Yeah, to much... Mixed reviews, I suppose, because he kind of came in late to the process as well. He did, but a lot of things. Too interesting. Wow. This is where this is going. He seems positive a follow-up to Solo in some form can happen as the life of the movie continues to grow in the time after release, and people are interested in the gangsters and other nefarious types. I mean, he just said gangster scenarios or gangster types, I think, but basically he meant nefarious types in the Star Wars universe. And it's true, like the more we've talked about it, I mean, I still don't like the idea that Solo had to explain a whole bunch of stuff that didn't need answers. There's a whole lot of gimmies in it, really. But there's still some cool ideas in there, and the stuff that I liked. And I think when people were now looking back at something like Rise of Skywalker and going, oh, okay. They then go back and go, well, you know, Solo wasn't that bad, really. Like,
yeah,
I still was entertained by it. Like, yeah, there's some silly stuff in it, but like, it was a fun Star Wars adventure. Like,
yeah, there's always sort of been rumors after it came out here and there, and now with Disney Plus, I think it could either be turned into like another movie or movies, but I think it probably wants to go down the road of like The Mandalorian and be like episodic now,
a Disney
and
Plus
especially feature
series,
on the other aliens and whatnot. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely the way to go. And I've forgotten the guy that plays Han Solo as well in the movie. I think he said he'd be keen to come back as well.
Oh my god, man, my brain's going. Alden. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten his last name. That's
I can't remember.
he's in.
For some reason, I've got
Hail Caesar
Taron
as
Egerton, but no, that's not it.
He's in Hail Caesar as well. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name. I've got his first name there, but I've forgot his last name. But we will see. I mean, who knows? It might be a few years down the track, and they can easily set that in the sense that everyone's a few years older, and it's a few years after the previous one, and it's not going to be a big deal. But I guess I just have to make that decision in the next few years, basically, and that's it.
Yeah, there's also, I'm just going to quickly touch on this in my Star Wars nerdiness here, just quickly. There's also the bit at the... should I kind of spoil the ending of the cameo in it? Because if people haven't seen it...
Solo. Well, let's put a general blanket spoiler warning. In case you haven't seen Solo in the last few years since it came out, then like
this is
block your ears
a little bit spoiler.
Block your ears for about 30 seconds.
So, at the end, Darth Maul shows up. I know, shocking, right? He's alive if you haven't seen Clone Wars. So I think a lot of people want to touch on that and what happens between that time and when you see him in Rebels.
I didn't write
there is a space of about several years there.
I don't know if you saw this. I was going to put it down, but I thought, nah, it's not enough to talk about. And now, in hindsight, this would have been perfect to put in there, but only because now we're talking about the spoiler. There was a story where apparently George Lucas's plan for his later trilogy was going to have Darth Maul returning as one of the main villains in that trilogy.
Yeah.
So I guess they've kind of still went down the idea about where they wanted to put him, and that idea of having him in Solo was part of it, and they were going to explore that should they have made more of them straight off the bat. But I mean, he's still there. That's it.
Yeah. Well, they with the 7th season of Clone Wars, which came out late last year, earlier this year, I forget. That featured more of Darth Maul in it towards the end of that season, and it kind of led up to where his character is in Solo, is the beginnings of where he is then in the universe. So anything after Solo, especially of Darth Maul, I would love to lead up to Rebels anyway, and how he got to there.
I think that's the case of where they would want to take that, and then look at all the things like, you know, more with Lando and you know, just more about the criminal underworld, which is exactly what Ron Howard was talking about, which is that people are kind of interested in this kind of gangster thing. And I think in some ways Mandalorian's kind of proven that. Like, it's a space western, but it's also about bounty hunters and outlaws, and it's, you know, so, and that's really caught on. So I think he's got the right idea, and I definitely think Solo has the undercurrent of that. And I've said that as well about Rogue One, but I also like that fact that you had like some greys in the what is normally black and white between, you know, the goodies and the baddies, and I think those ideas are kind of very much shown in Solo and Mandalorian a lot. For sure, too. And people like that. It's a little bit more, a little bit less clean cut than the regular Star Wars movies have been quite often. Yeah,
and I think Disney Plus, or Disney as a whole, are probably just going to see, I guess, how well season 2 of Mandalorian goes, and then with Kenobi, go by that and go, you know what? Let's give Solo 8 episodes or something.
Yeah, and see how it goes as well. Yeah, it's a good idea.
We'll explore that world, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of Obi-Wan, according to Ewan McGregor, the plan to begin shooting the Obi-Wan Disney Plus series starts in March of next year.
I'm sure you can't wait.
To paraphrase Skip, I am jizzing in my pants. It's going to be an absolute jizzer of a series. Mandalorian is great. I love Mandalorian. Give me that any day of the week. Please give me more. Obi-Wan will be brilliant, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ryan was sitting there first day, and then it starts and be like, hello there.
Yeah, if that's not the first word, I'm going to be angry. That should be the first words.
What is the first words? Who's he talking to? Hello there, I'm going to tell you a tale. A tale of a desert planet that I lived on.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know, just walking into the Mos Eisley Cantina. Hello there. I don't know. If it doesn't start that way, Disney Plus can take their money back.
He's going to be disappointed.
And shove it.
No. Disappointed in the series.
I'm kidding. I'm still going to watch it. Who am I kidding? you know I'll still watch it.
Yeah, I know you still watch it. You'll bitch about it after too. You'll still watch it.
I will.
Speaking of other weird things Disney Plus has been doing, but I mean, it's not that weird, but I can kind of see why people have been like, okay. So Disney Plus has added disclaimers to certain old animated features, or some of them are animated, but before the film screen, including Dumbo, Peter Pan, The Aristocrats, and the 1960 live-action Swiss Family Robinson film. Now, these disclaimers are not new. They were there, but you had to actually actively look for them under the description, I think. Yeah. But now they've made them mandatory that they play before the movie. It's like, I can kind of understand it for some of it, but it's just like, it was putting them in required necessary. I guess there's probably enough people complaining. I think, again, we've talked about this before. I think it's like, it should be just up to the parents. Be sensible about, if you're going to put something on for your kids, know what it is you're putting on. And if you historically know what it is, then you should be telling their children. You shouldn't rely on Disney to tell them for you, because they don't have any context of it. You put a 7-year-old in front of it and say, the stereotypes in this production may be slightly out of date as they were made in the time of its production. What does that mean to a 7-year-old? Like,
it kind of means nothing to them. I mean, to be fair, like, kids probably, they probably are reading at that age, but
it's not.
There's a lot of it they probably just won't understand as well.
It's the comprehension. It's not the reading. They might understand. They might be good enough to be able to read all the words, especially if they're big giant words like that. But it's the comprehension of what that means in the context of it. So what you would explain to a kid, you'd say, look, okay, so in the Aristocrats, there's these cats and they're Siamese because that's a type of cat, but they bought into this idea that they are very caricatured to be like insensitive versions of Asians, and that's something that we don't do. It's not. It's not polite to Asians to do that. You wouldn't go around and do that. And back then they didn't know better. And explaining that to a kid in a very more relatable way is much better than this has outdated stereotypes that were of its time.
I think it's probably for like people that want to watch it nostalgically as well, that have probably forgotten these small things. That's probably for the grown-ups too, maybe.
Maybe, but then like again, it was there, Some of them I can understand, like the Aristocrats, like perfect example, but like Dumbo is to do with I can't remember what the character is, but it comes down to those the minstrel stereotypes in the circus. And if you educate someone, it's pretty obvious. If you're as an adult, if you're smart enough to not be a racist, then you're going to notice that and go, "Oh, that has definitely not aged well."
No, for sure.
But I don't think it needed the blatant disclaimer that if you know this, you know this. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of hard to explain. I don't know if that's coming across the right way, but it's like, if you know it's racist, you're going to see it and know it's racist. You don't need a screen in front of you to tell you that it was outdated. Yeah, of course, the film was made in 1930. Yeah. It's not going to be modern. Yeah, and it's going to have some sensibilities from its time.
Yeah, so please don't write us letters saying, this movie has racial things in it. We know. We know. Look at the date it was made.
Yeah. And I guess maybe in that way, maybe putting disclaimers more so that Disney doesn't get bollocked by people on Twitter for not making a statement about it.
Yeah, or for not really having the common sense to realise when it was made as well. But
yeah. Anyway, we could go down a diatribe about this, but it's just like, I just remember seeing this and I saw that it come up on these and I was just like, that they were there. Like, if it's a modern film and there was something in it, people just wouldn't be watching the modern film, and it's kind of one of those things that's kind of just got to take the context of when it was made, or explain it to your kids. Yeah, if you are watching it with kids. We should move on from Disney, but we're kind of moving to Disney, I guess. But I wanted to go sideways. We talked about last episode the Dark Crystal follow up that they did. Was it Age of? Oh my gosh, my brain's gone blank. Age of something. But anyway, it got cancelled. We talked about it because it won an Emmy, and then literally the next day it was cancelled by Netflix. Mm-hmm. But Disney decided that they want to double down on this 80s kind of nostalgia, Jim Henson kind of thing, going on. And so they've basically gone, right, we're going to do a sequel series to Willow with Warwick Davis. That's a great idea. And we'll have, like it's old Lucasfilm because we own that license. So why not let's do that? Yeah. So,
Warwick Davis, he's up for anything, really.
Is that rude to say that?
No. Like, he's... well... I don't know, maybe it is.
I mean, there's a character that he likes that character in Willow. And it's been a long time since I've seen that movie. It just came out in the late 80s. But anyway, so they're doing a series. It's going to be John M. Chu in the director's seat, and I'm just thinking, I'm wondering if it's going to last more seasons than the Dark Crystal did, because obviously they said, part of that cancellation seemed to be the lack of appeal to an audience. We talked about this last time, that critically it did really well, but they said the audience numbers weren't very high. Is Willow going to be any different on Disney Plus? And I somehow feel like probably not, to be honest. Like, critically, it might do really well, but I don't know if the audience is there. How many people were clamouring to see more Willow, other than Warwick Davis? But yeah, you know what I mean.
Maybe Val Kilmer?
Oh, yeah, true.
Will he come back?
No, probably not. You never know. I mean, he's had his throat cancer thing, so...
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
He's not a Top Gun, is he? Or is he?
He is, yeah. He is. That was one of the ones he shot before.
Probably one of the few things then.
Yeah, but we'll see. I just can't see the success of this any better than if Dark Crystal can't, then I don't see Willow being any better. I mean, at this point, you might as well go, we're going to do Labyrinth as well, like a Labyrinth series, and then would that be more and more successful, especially you don't have,
David Bowie.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can get Jennifer Connelly, but...
It's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So, they're not going to do that. No. Well, I'd hope not. Here we are in like 6 episodes times. So latest news on another 80s flashback. They're making a new series of Labyrinth on Disney Plus. I shouldn't say that because I could be here in 6 months' time exactly saying the exact same.
We could, but we'll move on.
As you alluded to at the start of the episode.
Yes, as I kind of tried to avoid, but get into now, is with 21 Jump Street. Johnny Depp, who was in the original 21 Jump Street.
Yeah, he's also in the movie too.
And he is as well. Spoilers, if you haven't seen it.
Shit.
Again, if you haven't seen it after, 10 years? Close to 10 years?
It's close. 8 years.
Doesn't matter.
9 years.
Spoiler. Johnny Depp has been removed from future Fantastic Beasts sequels from the third onwards due to the loss of his libel defamation suit against the Sun newspaper in the UK. WB has announced plans to recast the actor, currently rumoured to possibly be Mads Mikkelsen. I hadn't seen that.
No, it came out today.
Depp will still receive his contracted fee of $10 million, even though he only shot one scene.
Yeah.
That's a good paycheck.
That is a good paycheck.
I'm not going
to... Well, I think he was supposed to be the highest paid. So,
yeah.
Part of the agreement as well is, I think it was like it was a triple play contract, which is the idea that three main actors all supposed to share the same amount of screen time throughout the movie, approximately. So that was him, Jude Law, and my God, my brain's gone blank. Who's the main actor? It's the main actor. We should remember this.
Newt Scamander.
Yeah,
give me a minute. It'll come to me. Sorry, carry on. You
thanks for the actor's name, not the character. That bit I could remember.
Yeah,
Eddie Redmayne.
Damn it.
Thank you. The one. So the three of them were supposed to have like equal screen time, but he was supposed to be the most paid. And obviously, being that it's a pretty ironclad contract, Warner Brothers probably has to pay him. The only thing that will stop that from happening is if he declines the payment or decides to donate it to something, which he could possibly do, but you never know. Given his current situation with the legal thing, he probably would rather spend that on his legal bills. I am sure. Yeah, the Mads Mikkelsen thing came out today. I think I've talked about you. Now that they've done one movie in the first movie where it was... Who was it that played him in the first movie?
Well, he kind of played himself at the end of the first one, but leading up to his reveal, it was Colin Farrell.
Okay, so yeah, that's right. We had Colin in the first one, and then him at the very end of the first and the second. I feel like almost he should be this constant shape-shifting force, and every movie should be a different actor. And you kind of equated it to the Dr. Parnassus, which was more to do with the fact, obviously, they didn't have Heath Ledger for the rest of the reshoot. But in this case, because you've got this thing about him changing, just make it that he's in order to hide his identity, he's always shifting into a different visage.
Potentially, and I mean, like, there's no real books to this as such, and I mean, J.K. Rowling is writing these as they go,
as we talked about last episode.
They can sort of make these to their own way, but I don't know how well versed some people are in the whole lore if much of this has been mentioned in the Harry Potter books, which I've completely forgotten. I honestly don't know, but I think as far as I know, all of this is
new ground.
Is all new ground, so they can write whatever the hell they want.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit last time, whether or not they even need to make more after the third, because obviously Johnny Depp had a certain level of impact on the film, and obviously if they remove him, then that's one thing, but J.K. Rowling is still involved, as you just correctly said. being involved in the writing process. And we won't go back into retreating exactly what we talked about last time, but obviously let's say that some people would not be happy to continue to support her viewpoints and therefore her work. So again, as I say, the last movie didn't do as well as the first. Is this a faded franchise, something that they wanted to make several movies of, and we reckon maybe just make one more and that's it, or two more, and because it doesn't, law of diminishing returns kind of thing. Yeah. But we'll see. But it was I guess not a surprise to see Warner Brothers go down the path, and we haven't heard anything from Disney about not having him back for like a Pirates thing. But we did talk a couple episodes ago about a new recast for it as well, or a new take with Margot Robbie as a female pirate or female lead character anyway. Yeah, and we'll see if that's still going to hold true. The Warner Brothers itself, aside from having issues with this, also got itself in hot water publicly due to the recent Witches film, the Robert Zemeckis one. Criticism was thrown at the hands, specifically given to the Grand High Witch played by Anne Hathaway in the book and the original film with what's her name? Oh my god, my brain's gone. Angelica Houston, thank you. Jinx, Amy Soda. Yes. That's on tape now. You got to do it. Oh, god damn it! However many listeners we have, they have proof. Unless I cut it out. Damn. The witches are described as having claw hands, kind of more like a cat's, but like kind of extended. And if you remember, she does have sort of longish fingers as well. Nails, however, the design in this remake has this kind of split hand design with like fingers kind of like melded into like two fingers. Yeah. If you haven't seen the trailer, the best way to describe it is like Spock doing his Klingon hand signal, but with like the fingers being fused and they're longer. Yeah. If that makes any sense to you, if you can picture that. But the problem with that design is that that's what can actually happen to real people in real life. Actual things which they're called hand and limb differences. People with like missing limbs or and their congenial impacts at birth or disfigurements and so forth that have happened. And one of them that can happen is a split hand kind of thing, exactly like that in the movie. And nobody looked into this. And so the outcry based around this was making like some sort of mockery about people with these sorts of differences. Warner Brothers issued a very basic statement of regret for the incident. However, it was very, very much by the books. But Anne Hathaway, however, was so upset by it seemed that she made quite a really solid like personal apology, and she also shared information and video for a thing called the Lucky Finn Project, which is a non-profit for those with limb differences like those that appear in the film. So obviously she felt extremely bad about it and she said as much, like, I turned up, I did my role and this was the prosthetics they designed. And I didn't think otherwise about it. So she's obviously very apologetic, and her big thing about it especially was obviously that she has children, and she's like, I don't want it to make children feel scared or frightened about people with those sorts of limb differences, because that's not fair to other children or people in general that have them. And she's like, if I, it was basically equating that to other people's children, and the fact that she doesn't want to be making things worse for people. So it seemed very heartfelt, especially compared to the Warner Brothers very boilerplate kind of, we apologise for this mistake, no research, was it undertaken this idea, blah blah blah. Yeah, and I mean, like, to take Anne Hathaway's side, like, she probably just, as you said, she showed up, they gave her the prosthetics, probably didn't think anything of it, and they probably just thought, yeah, okay, someone's already done research, this is fine. And this was the design we went with. We wanted long claw-like fingers, and this was an interesting look, So it's good on her for actually coming out and giving more of a response to it than Warner Brothers. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing about it, and this is no slide against the designers, if they people could say, oh, you're ignorant for not knowing, but obviously they just didn't do the research. But I think part of it you've got to remember is that they're looking for a fantastical design, and there are differences in the witches in this version. Like, they've got this kind of like slit kind of teethy mouths, kind of Heath Ledger-y, jokery sort of scars around the mouth. Yeah, and then they open up really wide when they're open properly, and the teeth go out wide, and they've got this big hideous grin. And it's very different again than the books and the previous film, because obviously maybe that was the point to them. They were trying to make something that was a little bit visually different to differentiate it from the previous versions and the way it was described in the books. So I'm sure it wasn't intentional from a designer's point of view, going, oh yes, I'm definitely gonna use those limb differences in there, that split hand thing, that's a great idea, I'll use that because that's really scary. I'm sure it wasn't anything like that, but it's a bit of a unfortunate impact of for a movie, especially one that's being marketed to children to kind of enjoy on some level.
Yeah, well, I think again it's probably one of those nostalgic things for people that have seen the original. They'll be like, oh yeah, all right, we'll see a remake of this.
I mean, it's still a book. It's still a Roald Dahl book. If you're a kid, you may have read it, and so seeing a film version of it. Yeah. I still haven't seen it, but I've seen enough.
Moving from one type of drama to another type of drama, there was a college drama class student who used Dr. Evil's monologue from the first Austin Powers for a class project. And she turned it into a serious reading.
Yeah, my understanding was that she read this and people didn't know what it was from.
Yeah. I think because
I saw this a little while back.
I think she was like 17, 18 or something, and this movie came out in 97.
Yeah.
So none of the kids in the rest of the
class.
But
there was teachers in there that were old enough. This is the thing I did get, that the teachers just didn't obviously.
Maybe they didn't see it, or they've got no idea,
or couldn't remember it being in there.
Yeah. So it goes to show how much movies sort of bypass people these days. That. So I'm going to say this in quotes, aren't really a classic or a good movie to remember or to recommend.
I get what you mean. It's not that Austin Powers is like a bad movie, but it's not like The Godfather or Citizen Kane. You're not going to prescribe it to a film class.
Exactly.
You're not. It's there, and it's a funny comedy of its own sort. But I guess this was the context you put it under. Like, I'm looking. You've put part of this.
I've put part of it, which I'll read out so people get the rough idea. But...
And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, like, if you did this with the right intent, you're taking something that, in the context of seeing who the character is in the situation, it's a therapy group. It's funny for the circumstances, but if you take all that scenery away and have someone just performing it, it could be performed very dramatic, and you wouldn't think about it. So I think it's not even a bad way. It's only if you really pay attention to it, you'd be like, it's a little bit weird, and why would your father make these comments?
Yeah,
but it's pretty funny.
So for those of you that don't remember the Dr. Evil speech from the first Austin Powers, I'm going to read a little bit of it here. I'm not going to do a serious reading version of it because I can't even remember the tone or inflection that she used. I tried to find video in preparation for this, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
It was online at one point.
So I think someone hasn't uploaded it to YouTube in full yet, or it's been pulled.
It was a while ago. I remember seeing some of it.
So the speech was, my father would womanize, he would drink, he would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. Sometimes he would accuse chestnuts of being lazy. The sort of general malaise that only the genius possesses, and the insane lament. My childhood was typical. Summers in Rangoon, luge lessons. In the spring we'd make meat helmets. When I was insolent, I was placed in a burlap bag and beaten with reeds. Pretty standard, really. I won't go on.
No, you can read the last bit.
All right, I'll carry on.
You might as well finish it.
All right. At the age of 12, I received my first scribe. At the age of 14, a Zoroastrian named Vilma ritualistically shaved my testicles. There really is nothing like a shorn scrotum. It's breathtaking. I highly suggest you try it.
If she got to that point, how did they not realise where this was going? Because, I mean, at this point, she's now inhibiting a male character, obviously. Yeah. Maybe that was part of the performance. It didn't matter if you were female performing male. But, like, there's bits in there that I'm like, this where does this come from? We make meat helmets?
Yeah,
like,
I think from memory, she doesn't go that far into it because it's only like a 10, 15 second clip.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think that's much longer.
She might have got to the insane lament thing, but...
Plus, of course, being a serious reading, it's quite slow and has a bit more meaning to it.
Yeah, it was funny because as you're reading through it, I can actually hear Mike Myers' version of it ringing through my head in places.
I was going to try and do my Dr. Evil impression, but I thought I better not because... In doing so,
you mean your Lorne Michaels impression?
Yeah, I was going to say, in doing so, it's my Lorne Michaels impression. Because that's basically what it is.
Yeah,
thanks to Dana Carvey sort of unlocking it for Mike Myers, so to speak, of how to do
it was especially that pretty standard, really.
Yeah,
but the very fast. But anyway, I can't get over that sort of ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on. Move on from meat helmets and shorn scrotums.
Yeah. We talked in previous episodes about John Landau sharing behind-the-scenes photos of Avatar 2 and
3
whatever
and 4
else,
and 5 and
whatever else they're making, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc., etc.
The animated series.
They're making,
and
the prequel and whatever
the
else.
The flamethrower.
I mean...
Sorry.
Oh my god.
The toilet paper.
Yeah.
The breakfast cereal. I searched for more money. Sorry.
It's going to get that way, isn't it?
It really is.
May the RDA be with you. So, Kate Winslet is in Avatar 2, or 3, or whatever one she's in. But this seems to be for Avatar 2. She plays like an underwater character, apparently.
Yes.
And there was a photo of her in like a big, a white wetsuit with like what looked to be like sort of wings or sticks.
Yeah, I saw that.
Sort of
It's a motion,
sort of
and we've talked about this before. There's motion tracking for underneath the water, which to me still boggles my mind how that works.
How that works, but I guess we'll see. So in doing that, she trained to breathe underwater. She trained to hold her breath underwater.
That's a really impressive thing. Kate Winslet, you're amazing. I heard you learn how to breathe underwater.
Yeah. She magically grew gills on the side of her head.
Yeah.
So she I think she had like the same sort of training as Tom Cruise did for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Now, he was at the time famous for holding his breath for just over 6 minutes.
Yeah.
In that diving scene where he falls down into the giant freaking toilet-looking thing that he dives into. It's like a giant... It looks like a giant toilet bowl or urinal or something, doesn't it? It's like a giant waterfall. You're not going to watch that the same now. You're just going to be like, whee!
Watch him dive into that bowl.
Yeah.
Watch out for the toilet duck.
Yeah. So Tom Cruise held his breath for 6 minutes, over 6 minutes for that scene, and it turns out Kate Winslet did it for just over 7.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
what's the free divers do it? Yeah,
they do it for close to 20 minutes,
and I assume it's the person. I don't think it's 20, but I think it's still pretty high. It's
at least over 10. I know that,
and I assume it's them that's been training these people.
Yeah,
on how to do it.
It'd have to be. I mean, I reckon Tom Cruise is crazy enough to go for 8.
I mean, Mission Impossible 9, the new free dive.
Well, like
scene.
you've got to think these people are actors, so they don't have as much. Well, I won't really say free time like free divers have, where they can spend all their time focusing on breathing techniques and practicing that. You know, like these
training.
actors, they have other jobs and other movies to do, so they can't do any free time.
We're not saying actors are lazy people.
No, it's just they've probably got so much on they don't have any spare time.
But the fact that then someone like Tom Cruise who trains himself in so many ridiculous talents, and also Kate Winslet is training specifically for a role to hold her breath so they can film underwater when they're not even. Like, the thing that I remember seeing about this is like, she's holding her breath underwater, but like the whole thing, she's playing a digital character, and they're filming underwater, but can she not have like assistants like keeping her breathing? Do the scenes have to be long enough that she has to breathe underwater? And she's not acting underwater, she's not able to talk, so any dialogue or anything that's happening that has to emote is all going to be looped ADR animation. So why? Is it just because she's like, well, I might as well train to do it because you know what? I mean, James Cameron's had these things with underwater. It was and ironically, a shoot that probably could have done with more actors being able to do it was The Abyss. Yeah. When they did that, they obviously did film it underwater. Some bits of Titanic as well, I guess, in some respects. But there was actual acting underwater or in water, around water. Alien Resurrection, not a James Cameron film, but another movie that obviously having to hold your breath and working underwater. And ironically, in both Alien and The Abyss, people almost died. Yeah. So through just bad incidents, not and thankfully no one did, but came close a couple of times. So here it seems almost silly, like you're in a soundstage with a water tank doing motion capture for an actor that probably can't talk underwater because they're holding their breath, so why?
Well, I mean, from what we've seen of this so far, a lot of this is potentially set underwater anyway, on Pandora, if it's even is Pandora itself. I mean, it could be one of the other 2 or 3 planets in the system, so to speak.
I guess we'll find out, but it's just it's mind-boggling on so many levels.
Definitely seems to be a water-heavy film anyway.
Yeah, and I think Cameron's made this comment as well. And I think the subtitles for them have come out, and one of them is very much obviously water-based. I can't remember. But
Okay.
We should move on. We'll see what happens with that. It'll be very interesting because there must be some reason for having to get her to do takes that are like that long with her holding her breath so that it works for a reason.
Yeah.
Or just that James Cameron is a sadist, and just likes drowning people. Or nearly drowning people, more specifically.
Well, let's just hope he has bigger doors next time for 2 people.
Just put the life preserver under the door. That would have solved the problem.
Yeah, that would have worked.
Thanks, Mythbusters.
Jurassic World Dominion has completed filming, even after that delay of its COVID shutdown. Sam Neill shared posts regarding the completion online, as did director Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, it was all very basic, very thankful for the crew on what was a very difficult and long production. It's good to see. Obviously, we talked about it last episode that the movie got a pushback release date, but they actually officially announced the date for mid-2022. So we'll have that to look forward to. So it's still got a good, 20 months, I think it is.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts of post-production due. So plenty of time to get all the dinosaur action going that they want to do with digital and edit and music and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's Colin Trevorrow, he released a picture as well, I think, from the last day of filming. I don't think it was
near the end,
it was near the end, and it looked to be like a winter shoot of some sort.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think it had the girl from the last movie as well, the clone girl. Spoiler. Sorry.
Just spoiling.
Keep in mind, it's after midnight when we're recording this right now. We're both probably a little tired, so...
Hey, Ryan.
We're not really thinking straight.
Did you know Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's father?
Wait, what?
Did you know the guy in the Crying Game was the girl in the Crying Game was a guy? See, now I've got it confused. Did you know Bruce Willis was dead all along?
Wait, what?
In the Sixth Sense?
You know, Forrest Gump was only a couple of blocks away from Jenny's house.
Yeah, but that's not really a spoiler. He wasn't smart enough to realise this. He thought he had to catch the bus. Anyway.
But yeah, so Colin Trevorrow's photos seem to look like it was the girl from the last movie in a snowy area, whether it's... And it's unclear of where in the movie it is. I mean, it could be another ice age that wipes out the dinosaurs, perhaps. So it could be turned into some sort of apocalyptic movie, perhaps.
Maybe this is the only way to get away from the dinosaurs somehow into a cold environment. I don't know. But I'm just spitballing ideas because you're coming up with wacky ones too.
Well, I mean, they blew up Isla Nublar in the last one.
Yeah, I'm still annoyed about that.
But I think early rumours came out that this is going to be partially set on Site B as well, as Isla Sorna.
Sorna, because we saw crates and stuff, or at least some section of it has to go back there for some reason.
Yeah.
There was other Jurassic World news. That was a second season for Camp Cretaceous.
Yep.
It was going to come out on Netflix next year. You haven't seen the
I haven't seen it. I want to. I really should.
I heard for what you could easily say is a kids show, it's quite dark.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of intrigued just on that level, and then obviously the tie-ins to the kids being stuck on Isla Nublar, actually. So and it sets up something to do around the...
Yeah, I think it's before the first Jurassic World.
No, I think it's after. After the first Jurassic World and before Fallen Kingdom. So they get stuck on the island after the incidents of the first movie. They were
that would make
kids
sense.
On the island when the incident that's in the first movie happens.
That would make sense.
I think that's the way I understand it. I might be wrong, but I think that's what I remember reading.
We'll make a note and we'll review it for the next episode.
Yeah, I'll try and sit down and watch that. That's a good idea. Usually you have a toy corner, and you saw this Ecto one, and then I don't know if you'd seen this news. You had noted when we were looking, you had shown me we talked about the Ghostbusters thing, and I'd seen the thing with the wheels on it.
Yeah.
That actually is actually a new thing from the upcoming Afterlife film. It's called the RTV, or Remote Trap Vehicle. It's got a small little four-wheeled remote-controlled ghost trap.
Yeah.
So the way they showed it off was literally by having it as part of that Lego announcement. And then afterwards they released a photo of it in the movie, so with the car. So it was quite an interesting way to do it. Quite often we've talked about this before, that Lego accidentally kind of leaks stuff inadvertently,
or sort of data miners try and find stuff to try and leak it before Lego want it leaked.
But in this case, that wasn't the case. They intentionally showed off the thing with the thing, but didn't point out what it was. They just had it as their part of the set, and then it was literally a couple of days later that the film. Like some publishing materials related to the film showing the new still and the item we talked about, and they said specifically this has just been recently revealed with the Lego set. Yeah. So
because originally when the new Lego Ghostbusters Ecto 1 was sort of rumoured and early leaks came out, everyone's just like, it's a Aston Martin sized vehicle of the Lego Ideas set, which came out several years ago.
Yes.
So some people were like, yeah, I'm okay with the Ideas set, but other people were like, oh yeah, it's a bigger set, I might get this now.
Well, this is like how there's been several like Tim Burton Batmobile sets.
Exactly, and the Batwing, which has come out as well this year. But yeah, and then people saw this little ghost trap on wheels. They're like, that's new.
Yeah, it's kind of. And then, what is it? Yeah, like what is it? It's kind of. It looks like a ghost trap, but is it? Is it
yeah,
like a
and then of
thing?
Course this news came out about what it actually is, and sort of confirmation that it does tie into the originals, but also the new one.
Yeah,
as well,
because it's connected to this movie. So
yeah,
and obviously the other thing about that, which kind of ties in very obviously to the movie, is that this new scale model has the booster jump seat thing that's was shown in the first trailer that we saw.
Yeah,
the kids kind of screaming around with one of them hanging out the side.
Yeah, I mean, I may pick it up, so watch this space.
We'll talk about it some more.
Yeah. We talked before about Bruce Willis being dead the whole time. And so it's kind of tied in nicely to this. So Bruce Willis is back in another Die Hard, but it's a batteries advert
for Die Hard batteries. I remember
Die Hard car batteries, which I don't know about, but clearly you do.
There used to be a brand, and ironically it died. They stopped making it, but they've brought the brand back, and so in order to sell the brand coming back, they've hired Bruce Willis, who will do anything for a paycheck.
Yeah,
to play John McClane in like some sort of heisty thing where he needs a battery to jumpstart a car.
Yeah,
it's pretty dumb.
Yeah, so originally there was a 15-second teaser on Twitter posted by his daughter Rumor Willis with just a hashtag saying "Die Hard is back." And people were like, wait, what? They didn't really understand, like, if there was another Die Hard movie coming.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Or what it was. And they're just like, okay, Rumor Willis, Bruce Willis, Die Hard. Wait, what? And she, they thought he was, on set or something.
This seems like a sort of thing that we'd usually do for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's weird that
it does. It really seems like a Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah. Anyway.
I never thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah. It's like these sort of things where you get a celebrity and you do a big filmic version, then you do a 30-second cut down for your Super Bowl.
So
you just read ahead.
Yeah, I have. I've just read ahead. I think I did, yes.
Do you want to read out what you wrote and then we can talk about this?
Yeah, all right. So I'd originally put down, it also features Carlisle, which I guess I'd forgotten who the character actually is, or the character's name.
As soon as I read that, I was like, who the hell is Carlisle?
Yeah.
And I was like, Argyle.
Yeah, so the character's name is Argyle, who is the limo driver from Die Hard.
Yeah, the actor Deborah White.
Yeah. So, I don't know where I got Carlisle from, I'll be honest. I'd only seen it recently as well, like Die Hard, so I don't know how that's just gone.
Carlisle.
I don't know.
I had like a chuckle when I saw that. I was just like,
yeah.
It's just so people know actually the exact sentence that is written is like, also features Carlisle returning his limo driver. So I just wrote, do you mean Argyle, Ryan?
Yeah. And it also featured the tech guy from Die Hard as well. And the quarterback is Toast.
We're talking about this. That was in Walker, Texas Ranger. I was talking about this earlier today, funnily enough.
Yeah, with Skip.
I can't remember the actor's name. But
yeah.
Clarence... Oh, I can't remember his last name. Clarence something or other. Skip was probably screaming at us right now while he's listening
to us. He's the guy in the white sweater. He's the tech guy.
And the quarterback is Toast.
That guy. Yeah. If you remember that guy from Die Hard, that's who we're talking about.
You can quote that today. That's quite funny.
Moving on to things that make you go,
Oh, jeez.
Hopefully that was good.
Yeah, it's good enough. Got the point across.
Yeah. Zachary Ty Bryan, who played Brad in Home Improvement, was arrested for strangulation. Now, when I read this, I sort of skimmed past it and I was going to come back to the article and I couldn't find it again, so I'm kind of gutted I didn't get more. And I was like...
So this is like a assault, domestic battery or something.
It seems to be, perhaps.
But it could be on another... It could be non-spousal. It could be just like he got in a fight with
It could be self-defense or something, yeah. Like,
weird. I haven't seen this at all, so this is all news to me as well.
It seems to be like he's the one that sort of gets in trouble every now and then, because it was in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift where he caused, the car crash in that, and the start of how he's in that.
Are you equating something from the movie to real life?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just trying to tie it in somehow.
I don't know what other things he's done. He hasn't done a lot.
He hasn't. No, I think the last time I saw him in anything was probably a couple of episodes of Smallville in the early 2000s.
That's a while
after
back.
Home Improvement. But
right, you have to come back to the story. We come back to this next episode. You can tell us more about this.
Find look it up. The news about it.
There was more news today. Who another person we haven't heard too much about. You do occasionally. He's been a writer as well. Wentworth Miller, who was in Prison Break. Mm-hmm. He's actually officially stated he will not be returning ever again to his breakout role as Michael Schofield in Prison Break. With co-actors from the show Sarah Wayne Kellys and Dominic Purcell also making the same statements in support. His real reasonings behind it are more about being true to himself and his sexuality, deciding he will no longer take any roles that have him playing straight males, saying basically that story has been told. So, there's not enough. He's basically saying there's not enough gay representation as main story actors, which is fair enough.
That's fair, yeah.
The thing about Prison Break is they had a return event series come back, so it was the fifth season, which came off the back of the movie, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know if there was a setup for another season, but I keep seeing stories, that it was always an option that they could go back and make another event series or a sixth season, but obviously this is now blown out of the water. And once he made that statement, the others basically said, "Yep, we're going to show our support by agreeing to the same statement. We're not going to return to the franchise, and it's done its dash." So it was quite an interesting story. Yeah. Miller's had I want to say a love-hate relationship with being famous, because I definitely know I've seen stories where after Prison Break and after a couple of movie roles, he kind of stopped acting for a while, and he suffers from anxiety and depression, and he kind of wanted to shy away from the limelight. And he then put on a bit of weight and stuff, and people, when he was out in public, people were like kind of shaming him a bit as well about it, which only made it worse. And then only in recent years, obviously, we've talked about this. He turned up on like some of the CW stuff.
Yeah, he showed up in Flash and Legends of Tomorrow,
with Dominic Purcell as well.
I think his character was killed off, but he's come back a few other times for an alternate version. Yeah. So he may or may not be dead, depending on how you look at it.
I'll be interested to see if that representation issue covers that at all as well. If he's never going to come back to those superhero roles, show roles anyway, with this future expansion of this multiverse kind of concept. Yeah. But you never know. We'll know. He didn't make any statements about that. Prison Break was really his main thing, and that's obviously the thing he's most well known for. Yeah. And he was he was blunt, but he was very honest about it. And he's just, if you can understand and support me, then that's great. I know there's big fans of this franchise and me in that role. And if you don't like it, then that's, and you don't like it because of something you're against to do with me and my choices in life, and that's your problem, not mine. Yeah, which is also fair cool too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dwayne Johnson looking at rebooting The Scorpion King?
Yeah, it came out in news today. There was no more attached to it. His production company and some of the people associated with him were looking at the idea of actually creating a proper Scorpion King movie with him in the role where it's not as ridiculous, I think, is basically the idea, I guess.
Yeah.
And not that the original movie was bad, but it obviously had to tie itself well into the expectations of where the character ended up in the second Mummy film, I guess. Yeah. So... yeah, I guess that's the idea, to kind of create this iconic character outside of that franchise and reboot it for.
And is it going to be like a continuation of that, or is it going to?
I think it's
continuation of 2 and 3.
No, I think it's its own thing. I think the idea is rebooting it, taking the character and having his own series where he's his own thing. But there wasn't much in it. The story that she came out this afternoon, I think. And I just literally added that last minute this afternoon.
Okay. As long as it's not bad CGI like in The Mummy 2, then... Because is it Corridor Crew? They did better CGI on it.
I remember trying to do that with a bit of deep fake mixed in.
So if they can work on that, that'd be great. Give those guys more paying jobs. They need it. They do some good stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
Keanu Reeves was spotted in Germany sporting a new buzz cut and no facial hair for the Matrix shoot. Yeah, all right.
He looks more normal than he did with long hair and no facial hair.
Yeah.
No good for that much.
Rumours obviously surrounding the point of how Reeves looked in the real world of the Matrix.
Yeah, the quote-unquote real world.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't know. So
the world of Zion, if you will.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what the context of that is in the relation to the movie. So everyone was kind of surprised. He was just seen out in public. It was him walking around and doing something, and then later on he was seen carrying some bags and meeting up with his girlfriend. So and people probably were doing a bit of a double take at first, going, that looks like Keanu Reeves, but he's got no hair.
Yeah, well, I think we had a big, well, I don't know about we, but I think it was more Skip and I, because I think you were busy working at the time, and then you saw this big paragraph of messages. Like Skip and I were talking about it, of how it's potentially, it could be like a flashback to when he originally got woken up, and it's like filling in a blank there somewhere, or it could be like a clone of him, like the machines have somehow worked out to clone certain people, and because he died but kind of didn't die, I suppose, at the end of the third Matrix.
What if it's that at the end of the Matrix was just another layer of reality and control, and then
it's possible,
when he died at the end of that movie, he didn't actually die, he just basically got booted out of that version of the Matrix into something else. We don't know.
Kind of like an Inception sort of
thing, but it could be all sorts of things. I mean, and to be quite honest, considering how crazy both the original movie was and where the sequels and spin-offs and Animatrix and all that went, who knows? It could be any point, and I think we're going to get some pretty crazy surprises. Whether or not it's going to be a good movie, well, that's yet to be seen, but I think no matter what, we're going to get some like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that moments.
And I think the only people that really know where this is going is it just Lana Wachowski?
Yeah. And obviously the people involved, the actors and stuff, know where it's going.
Yeah. As well.
So yeah, we'll see. But I thought it was more relevant because you guys were talking about, but the fact that obviously he almost you would be more comfortable with him with no hair and no beard than you would with long hair and no beard.
Yeah. What about beard and no hair?
Well, that worked alright because there was the character he played in Bill and Ted.
Yeah, that's true. He was in prison.
And he had the big bushy.
Well, he still kind of had like some hair
on the top, but it was close enough that you would be able to you could easily see what he would look like without.
I actually did prefer that. You're right.
Here we
go. Carry on. Again, it's after midnight still. Hollywood Reporter has said that Hasbro plans to turn the Power Rangers into some sort of connected universe deal that encompasses all of its film and TV projects. The project will be headed up by TV creator-producer Jonathan Entwistle. Hasbro purchased the Entertainment One production brand, E1, last year, and seems to be planning to make this the first of its major projects.
Now, you remember a couple of years ago there was a rebooted film idea of Power Rangers that I thought was actually not that bad.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. As a semi-long-time Power Rangers fan, I enjoyed it.
It wasn't. I thought it was alright, but it didn't do very well, so now they're talking about this rebrand, but obviously it's something that is a multi-connected universe thing, because that's what things are these days. But I didn't know about the Entertainment One thing until I read literally a second article about it, and I was like, well, that makes sense if you're going to create this. And E1 is kind of a big distribution brand. They exist here in New Zealand and Australia. They do a lot of distribution for films, so it kind of makes sense that if they're going to buy this up. But it's crazy that Hasbro's got the money to now go buy an entertainment production brand to then turn its products directly into films. So I don't know if I'm kind of almost surprised that, say, something like Snake Eyes, which is coming out, wasn't already part of that kind of plan. But anyway,
next it'll be Nerf.
Probably, and whatever, Barbie.
Yeah, it's true.
Another Transformers. Yeah. Separate from the current, unless they've still got a standing deal with Paramount, or it's a tied Paramount Entertainment One deal.
I mean, my kind of thought on this is that every couple of years or so, there's like a big Power Rangers sort of crossover where past Rangers sort of come back and help out the current team, or whatever, and they're always from like a slight alternate reality. So
they could possibly tie the current existing thing into a new future thing by doing a same sort of thing.
Yeah, so they could tie in whatever this is going to be into the original TV series, the original movies, and the reboot from a few years ago. I think
they're going to ignore the reboot on the film one from what it sounds like. But I think maybe this is a bit disingenuous for me to say that this shared universe is just what we're doing now, because to be fair, as you point out, Power Rangers has been doing a shared universe concept for quite some time, to be honest.
And I mean, I think I've lost count. They're up to about 25 seasons of Power Rangers now.
Jeez.
I think I'll have to look that up.
You're probably close.
Yeah, but in Japan with their Sentai, I think they're close to 40 odd now. So if not, they've passed 40. So they're probably getting closer to 50. So it's just going to grow from here if Power Rangers, keeps going.
How? I mean, I watched that thing on Netflix, the Toys one, and it was just interesting to see how Power Rangers has been an evergreen when no one ever expected it to be. Like, it just never has. It's kind of had its ebbs and flows, but it's never really gone away since its inception, which is just crazy to think. Like,
especially in America.
Yeah,
for definitely America.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's never really kind of stopped, and so I guess it makes sense they want to keep trying to figure out where they can merchandise it, make money, make more shows, make more TV, make more films. Yeah. Other 1990s stalwarts we're going to talk about is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, obviously, I think we've talked recently about other versions of them trying to make Ninja Turtles. I think it's even one with Seth Rogen attached as a producer, an animated one.
Yeah.
But the original writer for the 1990 movie, the first movie that ever came out from the franchise, wants to return to that original film series and has talked to both the director of that film and Brian Henson, who's the son of Jim Henson, whose company made the Turtles, the suits for the film. Nothing official has been planned, but they said if someone or some company wants to fund it, they would gladly all make a new film. I wanted to just kind of add, because I just how crazy this is, and it's kind of one of those things where we've talked about recently with like Lego sequels. But you've got to remember, like, this sounds kind of ridiculous now, but at the time, it was like the highest grossing independent film of all time. It made like over $130 million US, which 130 million in 1990 was huge.
Yeah.
And over 200 million worldwide. Again, that was huge in 1990. And the original trilogy of movies made more than 500 million worldwide, so it was over like a 5-year span. The first was the most successful with a lot, and they were diminishing returns, but they were pretty reasonably successful. And that was a record until 1999, when the Blair Witch Project made the most amount of money. So I guess it kind of in my mindset, it would be something that's kind of very much in that current thing of nostalgia and Lego sequels and stuff, where you could take the old thing and make something new out of it, following up. And I think there's an automatic market out there, because I think you can still show kids those original movies and they're still pretty entertaining, because they're still impressive suits. The effects are pretty good for their time, and because they're mostly practical, not really CG, they've kind of aged pretty well.
Yeah, they'd still hold up like most practical things.
I think the only issue you've got is the original film, and to the original creators' own admittance were kind of dark. And to the point when they made the sequels, the second and third ones, they were much more lightened up, and like the Ninja Turtles couldn't use weapons so much, so they used like items more than their weapons. They just kind of had
what was around them,
around them, rather than using the weapons they had, which they did in the first one, which is a bit weird. And I don't think anyone really gets properly killed in that second one. I can't remember the third, but yeah, anyway. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if they can get that. But I think there's a market there for it. If there's a market there for other, as we're talking about Lego sequels, I can't see this being any different, especially if they're wanting another marketable range to go in with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles brand.
And I mean, because
is that Hasbro as well?
Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah,
and I think they own. Well, they did. I can't remember. It's gotten very
because I know the ones that came out a few years ago, like they definitely had Hasbro attached to them.
Because there was
toys and all that as well.
There was rights, because the original toys were like Playmates or something, and then they like sold the license to something out, and it's been around a few times, and the license got sold to Nickelodeon, I think, and
yeah, they still have a cartoon series.
Yeah, and I think they still have an agreement, but I think the actual overall ownership rights for the brand now are owned by Hasbro itself, or a combination of Nickelodeon and Hasbro. It's very it's very complicated, which is probably the thing that would make it more difficult to happen.
Well, keep an eye on it for sure.
Yes.
Andy Samberg, Craig Robinson, and Common star in a film called Super High, where people exist in a world where getting high also gives you superpowers. Samberg and Robinson also produce.
What a surprise!
Yeah,
Ryan's got nothing to say about this. He's just like, yep, that's the thing.
I'm surprised. You mentioned his name just before. Seth Rogen isn't in it. It seems like something he'd be.
And maybe he'll cameo.
Yeah,
that's true. There's also, while you say that, it also seems like an idea that I'm surprised it's taken this long for someone to make. You know, even if it wasn't a film like this, like some sort of parody, maybe there is something out there and someone's going to go, actually, I had that idea first and I'm going to sue for money. But yeah, we'll see. I just thought I'd throw it in there because I was like, oh, it's a nice junction into superhero stuff.
Yeah, it's fair. Moving to DC properties, Michael B. Jordan is producing a Static Shock movie. He's also supposedly being considered to direct the next Creed film at this stage.
We've got that trend this week about actors directing themselves, haven't we? I've realised this is kind of a thing this episode. Static Shock is what I remember the TV series, a very unique character in a very unique series, which black superheroes very underrepresented in general, but especially at the time. The series was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I think the character was only a part of the 90s, was created in that time period, late 80s or 90s.
Yeah, it was very recent.
Very recent. And I could see him being very involved in that sort of stuff, and I think it's something that I would like to see. I think it's a character that's I always want to say was a bit more down to earth. If that makes sense. Like realistic. It was kind of interesting. It was a streetwise kid, kind of. It was always a very interesting show, and I don't know why I just always liked it when I watched that TV show. So I can see a movie. I've never seen any of the comics of the comic property, but I just based on the TV show, I could see that being a very interesting movie. Much in the same way, I guess the closest thing I can akin to it is like the recent Spider-Verse movie with Miles Morales. It's kind of that street kid kind of and gets superpowers. But I think that's the only problem that it's got against it, is that if you put this out, some people might look at it as a bit of a derivative release. Not that the stories were derivative, but the fact that they're only making the Static Shock movie because the Spider-Verse movie did so well, especially if they go down the animated route for it, other than like a full live action. Nothing's been said about what it would be, if it would be live action or animated, but we'll see. I guess it's another thing. He does rack up a few of these production things. He's obviously a very busy man. So, and Creed again, it makes sense after the second one. I still haven't seen it actually, to be fair. I still need to see it, but again, going back to what we've been talking about, actors directing, being in a series that he's such an important part of. Yeah,
he's kind of got to know the world, well enough now. Jared Leto and Amber Heard both added to the reshooting lists for Zack Snyder's Justice League miniseries, I suppose you could call it now. They're reprising their versions of the Joker and Queen Mira, respectively.
Yep.
Joe Manganiello also returning for Justice League reshoots as Deathstroke.
Yeah, most people don't even know he's in that, because I think he only appears at the very end. This is a spoiler, I guess, but it's not really a spoiler because he's just in it. But he appears at it's like a post credits or the very end of the Joss Whedon's version of Justice League. So he's not even really in the movie. But obviously, if Zack Snyder's had this plan, he was supposed to be in the movie or in that movie earlier, I guess. So having him coming back obviously tells us as much. So I don't think that's much of a spoiler. The other two make complete sense. It'd be interesting trying to convince... I can't believe they convinced Leto to come back to the Joker after all the things he was so disappointed about, the fact he got so cut out of it. Yeah. But I guess this is his way to get himself some more screen time in a role that he was very happy to undertake, but just disappointed in the outcome, I guess.
Yeah, now I wonder if he's going to go full blonde again to get the green hair, and then, or if it's just going to be a wig.
Don't know.
This time around.
I guess we'll find out. I'm hoping it would be full thing, otherwise we may end up with a CG mustache replacement.
Oh yeah, could be CG hair replacement.
Yeah, or like it's just not a very good wig that obviously stands out against the stuff that isn't reshoots.
HBO Max to have 10 one-hour episodes of Green Lantern series from DC TV stalwart Greg Berlanti.
This is a live-action series, I'm guessing?
I would assume so. I mean, Greg Berlanti's done like your Arrow, your Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, etc., etc. The Arrowverse, Batwoman as well, and now I think Superman and Lois are now part of that universe.
I'll take this. Yeah, true. I'll take this as going to be another one of those in that universe, and it's going to be a live-action one from that.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it's on HBO Max and it's not part of the CW, whether it's going to be the same universe or not. Or
maybe it's just because it's a Warner Brothers platform, and so the only green light they can now get for any of those shows is to do that. And I guess it's probably some of those.
Would you say green light or Green Lantern?
Jesus. I mean, that's the thing, only to get it over there. But maybe some of those CW series will just end up on re-rotation on HBO Max as well.
Perhaps,
for rebroadcast. So if that's part of it, maybe it's part of a deal. But then, you would think that it would still go onto the network, so rather than just onto Max. I guess we'll find out. It'll either be completely its own thing or part of that connected universe. You'd think it would be the latter, but
well, they've kind of touched on one of the characters from Arrow potentially being John Stewart, Green Lantern, because I think his first name is John, and then his father's last name was Stewart.
Yeah,
but he adopted his mother's last name or something. So people are like, just make him Green Arrow, and then I think it was the end of Arrow, or I think the Flash episode or something, where it's like a slight future jump. There was like a green light come down from space, and everyone's like, it's an origin, and you don't really see what happens. So
they just left it
perhaps it could be that. I don't know, but If you know what I'm talking about in regards to the Arrowverse and John Diggle's character, you kind of know what I mean. But if you don't know, then I can't help you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just don't listen to me rambling. Superman apparently in Pattinson's Batman film.
I can't see this. I can't see this happening. No. It seems unrelated.
Yeah. So there was photos from the set seemed to show somebody dressed as Superman, but the photos came out in October. When the photos were taken, we're unsure. But since they came out in October, it was possibly a Halloween party or somebody screwing around on set, like Spider-Man crashing a blooper of the original X-Men film, saying, oops, sorry, wrong set, and just wandering off and making everyone laugh.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. So,
I'm hard to believe it's going to be.
It kind of seems like it's a costume store costume anyway, so it doesn't seem like it's a high...
someone being silly.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's high production value suit. So,
maybe the only other alternative is that Superman exists in this universe and someone dressed up for something else in the movie that's a reference to the fact that Superman exists in this universe.
Potentially, yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of there, but it probably still isn't.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. All we know so far is that Batman and Catwoman are in this movie. That's all we know.
And the Penguin.
And Penguin, of course, sorry.
And the Riddler. And this and that and this and that. And that. No, but we know the Riddler's in there as well.
Yeah, of course. Going back to Marvel now, for a change. Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange will appear in the next Spider-Man film. This may explain the appearance of an alternate version of Jamie Foxx's Electro, or maybe not at all.
But yeah, considering what we were talking about last time with him turning up and playing a different version of the character, having him be the same character but in an alternate take may explain it. But then you could explain it that he could play exactly the same version who's just somehow come through to this. Yeah, okay.
I think Jamie Foxx has come out and said that he'd be okay with being the green and yellow comic.
Well, I think he just said he said he was just not going to be the blue one.
Yeah, he's not going to be the blue one. Yeah,
that was in the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, which I haven't seen either of those, so I'm not going to go into detail at all on those.
They're all right. They just weren't good either. They're just like, it was that point of like, do we really need another Spider-Man origin story? And the setups for it were obviously pushing very hard for a Sinister Six kind of expanded universe Sony kind of thing, and it just didn't really fit, and it felt like it was kind of being forced and rushed a little bit. And the quality was, production-wise, was fine. It just didn't have the fun and excitement the Sam Raimi movies, at least the first two of those did. So yeah, and not actually, to be fair, all three of them, even the not so good Spider-Man 3 of Raimi, still had fun in it. Yeah. So it just didn't. It was a little bit too dry and a little bit too serious. So yeah.
And speaking of the Amazing Spider-Man and the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, rumors were also flying around, or would they be swinging around? That both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are being talked to about reprising their Spider roles for the next film as well. Sony later denied this to say that nothing is confirmed. So take this with a grain of salt, I guess. Given how excited the internet was for this idea, don't be surprised if Sony looked to try and make it happen eventually, similar to a live-action Spider-Verse.
I think that's in their plans. I really, knowing that Marvel's going down a multiverse route, and Sony wants to have, like we've talked about before, like Venom and Morbius and all these things tie in, and we've already seen that connection to the Raimi Spider-Man in that trailer as well. I feel like this just seems like a natural progression, and if it's done with a deft hand, like the right way, it should be really good. And I think somehow convincing them to come back, even if it's just for a small bit, is definitely a good way to make that really solidify. And I think that's why everyone's latching onto the idea so much, because both of them kind of finished, not incomplete, but especially the Garfield version, but the characters still exist in a version, and to bring them back and somehow and expand a little bit on their story would be an interesting way to do it, and especially to put them in a new movie with Tom Holland as well, perhaps.
And I mean, like,
and someone else, other people playing other characters,
or
alternate versions of those characters too.
Doctor Strange is definitely the key to this as well, if they do want to go with the multiverse.
Well, especially when you're talking about you're talking about the next movie and what it's titled and what its intent is going to be, and also what we've seen of WandaVision as well. So
yeah, well, that seems to be the same as well. So it's either going to be one of those two that's going to be opening a doorway. Keeping with Marvel for now, Vincent D'Onofrio wants Daredevil's Kingpin, or himself, to appear in Spider-Man 3.
Which makes sense, and it would be kind of that same thing we've talked about with, I guess, with Electro here, and also with J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
You can have the same actor playing an alternate version, and it's fine. And he was a pretty on-the-nose, good casting choice for Daredevil.
Really good.
So, again, it would make sense to bring that version back somehow if they can, even if it's a different version of the character in a different alternate universe kind of type, and still have him. And they can stylize him a little bit differently, but still have the core of him underneath it, and it would work. And I think, again, if the internet likes it and the executives like it, then they'll probably make it happen.
And I think especially now that Marvel sort of have more of those rights back, because there was kind of like a rights deal with Netflix and Marvel themselves.
Yeah, well, part of that, and also
they're under Marvel, but Netflix have it, and it was a weird sort of...
I think parts of that is still... The only ones that are still tied is, I think, obviously, Universal still has Hulk and... partially, and, well, shared use, and Fox still had a weird condition with the Fantastic Four characters that I don't think they technically were still owned by Disney, but the way it was worded meant they were in a weird shared space, and I don't know where those characters sit now. And then the other ones, I think the only other one was Blade, but that's now back at Disney as well.
Yeah.
I think that's about it now. I think there might just be Hulk now.
Yeah,
actually.
and of course Spider-Man with Sony.
No, also Fantastic Four is part owned by Constantin Films, the German film company, because they bought the rights in the late 80s or 90s.
That's right, because there was that
film that they made, they never released, and then they were still involved in the production of all the Fox ones, and I think they're still technically tied to those Fox rights, even though Disney got the rest of them back.
Yeah. And speaking of the Fantastic Four, all of the Fox Marvel films, so it's like your Fantastic Four, your X-Men's... Is that it? Yeah, it is it.
Yeah, I mean, technically Blade would probably be on there, but it's not the type of movie they're going to put on Disney+.
Not in a hurry, no. Especially not the first one.
No, well, not any of them, really.
Oh, yeah, well, that's true. No. So they're now in their own area on Disney Plus called Marvel Legacy.
Yeah, so it's all the non-MCU based films, basically.
Yeah, so if you go to your Disney Plus and you go to your home screen and you just go across to Marvel, it'll still be under there, but it'll be under its subcategory of Marvel Legacy.
And I think they advertised it as Marvel Legacy. I saw it when I popped on as like its new thing edition. So yeah, I thought it was worth noting that because it's become quite relevant after us talking about those movies.
Moving on to our in memoriam section.
Mm-hmm.
Conchata Ferrell?
Yes.
Ferrell,
I think.
Ferrell. Sorry if we're saying that wrong. She was best known from her role as Berta on 11 seasons. Wow, I didn't realise it was that many. And over 200 episodes of 2.5 Men. But has been a long-running character actress in numerous films, including Mystic Pizza, Edward Scissorhands, True Romance, Erin Brockovich, Mr. Deeds, and Krampus, among many more.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see this, I guess. It was crazy because some of these I didn't even, I knew it was her, but I didn't even realise it was still her in those roles until after I was listening. I was like, oh yeah, I do remember in Erin Brockovich. Oh, and I do remember in True Romance. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's kind of weird because she became that stalwart character on that TV show, for so long. That's just basically what I think me and most people would naturally associate it with. The first thing that comes to mind. But as soon as I read those, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember this because she has a certain snappiness to her thing, which is what made her character so, well, it wasn't just what made her character last as a standout in that show. It's actually what kept her on the show because the character was not supposed to hang around.
Yeah, she was only supposed to be here and there.
Well, I think it was only supposed to be for the first season because the idea was that he had this housekeeper, and then once his brother moved in, he didn't really need the housekeeper anymore. He was going to just rely on his brother picking up the slack because he wasn't working or something. And so, but she was just so good at snapping her lines and being that the punch,
polar opposite to Charlie Sheen,
and being the polar opposite and being that smart ass that the writers loved it, and everyone liked it and thought she was really good and kept her on, and that's the sorts of roles that she played so well so often. And and when I want to typecast her on it because she can definitely had range. She played other types of characters, but the movies I remember in, she had this kind of almost wicked streak to her. She could be quite snappy, not horrible, but like very commanding. And I think that's, as a character actor, what makes you memorable.
Yeah.
And why you would continue to get those sorts of works, and why you know, when you're casting director or even the director on the set wants to make every character memorable, that's the sort of person you go for. You know, you want that person that's going to stand out no matter how small the role.
Yeah. It's quite funny. I was just thinking as you're going off, like, the first thing I remember in was from Mr. Deeds. She run the pizza place in the small town that Mr. Deeds is from.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even put that on.
It's there. And then I remember sort of seeing 2.5 Men. I didn't sort of catch onto it when it first started, but I sort of watched it later on and caught up when reruns were played. And I was like, hey, it's a woman from Mr. Deeds.
And she plays that sort of role in Mr. Deeds too.
Yeah.
She's memorable for those reasons that the type of character she plays and just portrays. I mean, the outpourings, I saw Adam Sandler make a comment definitely in regards to Mr. Deeds. Some of the other people that have worked with her on stuff like Mystic Pizza and obviously 2.5 Men. So yeah, obviously it had a surprise impact, and gosh, not even to say this, but any performer would be absolutely floored to be able to do 11 seasons of a show and 200 episodes, you know, of anything. And so I'm sure she was extremely happy to have that consistent work on a role that she enjoyed, and I think everyone else enjoyed her.
Yeah, and it wasn't even supposed to be that big.
Yeah,
as well.
Exactly.
There's also Elsa Raven, who's known to most people as the Save the Clock Tower.
Save the Clock Tower!
And the woman from Back to the Future. Aside from this and dozens more character roles, she was also well known for her work in the TV series Wise Guy and as fated rich passenger Ida Strauss in James Cameron's Titanic.
Yeah, which I had completely forgotten about until I read this today. I was like, I didn't even realize. I honestly, this sounds really hot, but I did not even realize it was the same woman.
Huh. I didn't know at all. So.
No, I was like, wow, because I had to go look it up. I was like, hang on, wait, what? She played that character, and I was like, oh, it's her. It's totally her. Bob Gale had some really kind words, and kind of similar to actually, kind of now thinking about it, kind of similar to what I was just talking about with the last one, just about having that right character actor for the right role that makes them memorable, and that's really down to your casting directors and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, about making any role, no matter how big, how small, memorable, and the fact that so many people can always remember exactly what you do, which is like, save the clock tower, save the clock tower, and then getting in, you know, their faces about trying to save the clock tower, and it was such an important, in the end, it becomes such an important key role, completely inadvertently because of the flyer and the note, and then that's the message that he's like showing off the phone number, and then Doc realizes, hang on, wait, this is in the future and this is lightning and I can use this. It's so important. It's so blink and you miss it as a plot point early on, but she still used that role so well that you, as soon as he realizes, you go back to when did he? Oh, that woman. Because she stood out in that way, and it's such a minor role is made so important, but through that just one small performance, she's in the movie for a minute, if that.
Because I think you sort of hear her and see her a little bit before she really appears, just in the background. She's trying to raise money to save the clock tower, obviously. And then there's a bit where Marty and Jennifer are on the bench, literally in front of the clock tower, and she comes right up to them in their face, and then that's the important part. We also lost probably the best James Bond in most people's
eyes. I would say that's the majority of people would say that's the case.
Sir Sean Connery. That was a shock. I mean, who really saw that coming?
I mean, he was 90.
He was 90. It's a good innings.
He hasn't been acting since technically 2004, but he retired officially in 2006. He the last movie he did was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It was not a good shoot from all counts, and that really put him off. He's like, I don't need to act anymore. I had heard a story about a year ago that he was not well. And obviously, once news had come out that he passed away, there was a photo that went around with him and his son from his birthday, not this year, but the last year. And he was pretty skinny then, and you could see he was pretty aged, caught up to him. And so the fact that he managed to last, more than another year, that's pretty impressive. Had I seen that earlier, I probably would have been like, wow, I'm expecting that we'll be hearing he's not going to be around for much longer. So that's pretty impressive. And, what can you say? Like a legacy of iconic roles.
For sure.
Famous things. He was also an actor that was reportedly quite difficult to deal with at times. But
stories over the years come out.
But the stories also came out like much like they did when the announcement of his death. things about him doing really amazing things for filmmakers and films. I think I told you about that. Like Michael Bay, of all people, put out the story about how when he was doing The Rock, and they went like a week over his shoot schedule, and the executives were breathing down his neck, and Connery came in and like basically said, sort it out, and they did. Because it was him. Yeah, they were never going to say no to Sean Connery.
Yeah, it was like Michael Bay needed like more money for like the extra week of shooting or whatever, and Sean Connery's like, "Oh, you better fucking do it." And they're like, "All right, like our hands are tied. All right, go. Here you go.
Yeah,
here's this flash briefcase. Go."
Yeah, and I mean that's it. There were stories like that constantly. Like
he just had this sort of I won't say power about him, but just this presence about him where people like probably showed him the respect he rightly deserved.
I think the other thing though about Connery that we never really appreciate is that even in the worst movies that he could be in, sometimes he was the best parts of them. You could take. I recently obviously saw the second Highlander again. Not a great movie by any stretch, but dear God, does he make that movie work when he's in those scenes? It's something about a screen presence, and I think that's it. That's the bit that you realize when you watch any movie he's in, be it a James Bond movie or anything else. He just commands a certain aura and screen presence that certain actors just have, and he did, and that's literally what it comes down to. I mean, I'm going to let you read it because I thought I saw it too, and I thought it was a really good comment. But the one that Kevin Smith,
so I saw Kevin Smith's quote and I really liked it, so I thought I'd take a part of it down. Kevin Smith talked about how his dad took him to go see a Sean Connery movie, and
was it the Bond movies?
I think it was one of the Bond movies, and how Kevin Smith went into detail of how Sean Connery was his dad's favourite actor, probably like most people. I'm sure your dad really liked Sean Connery as well, and other people's dads. But Kevin Smith's quote here was, thank you for the hunt, for being untouchable, for being a rock, for naming the dog Indiana, for having a dragon heart, for reviving Robin, for being an immortal, and for your word is Bond. There can be only one, and you were definitely it."
Yeah, that's
like to me, like even reading it again now, that's kind of a very teary-eyed sort of thing to say as well. Like that's that's something to give it at a funeral.
Oh, it is.
Like that's wow. That's.
I mean, and that's only touching on some of the iconic characters that Connery brought to life. Realistically, and that's crazy. And the films that would be so different without him in it. And I guess, I mean, not to be silly about it, but anytime we're reading through these and we're talking about people that pass, the roles that they inhabit will be different if it wasn't them. That's part of what the actors bring to the table. That's who they are. But as I said, there was something about Connery and his screen presence that basically could elevate, sometimes even the worst, but make the best even better.
Yeah. And I kind of feel as though that without, like you talking about how certain actors make certain characters their own, and then they make this universe, I think without Sean Connery, there probably would have been no James Bond. Or as big as it is now.
It's hard to fathom. Like, it would have taken someone of his level essentially to come in, and there was other casting options that may have made it work, but it would be a different Bond. And whether or not, you're completely right, whether or not that franchise would continue to exist 50 years on and 25 movies, maybe not.
Who knows?
But it's definitely worth a thought. And I guess that's it. I think what we can say is not shock for the death at age 90. It's just, it makes you think about the legacy of someone of his acting caliber leaves behind.
Moving on to a kind of a 6 degrees of separation here is a SNL sort of a skit from Sean Connery to Alex Trebek. We lost legendary host of Jeopardy since 1986, I think. Might be earlier, I can't remember. But he's been hosting that since 1986, and he's passed away this past couple days, I think.
I mean, Trebek, aside from Jeopardy, he hosted lots of game shows. He hosts a lot of events, a lot of shows. He's prepared himself in so many things. Films, TV, and
inducted into the Canadian TV Hall of Fame, I think, several years back.
I would be surprised if he's not in the American one too, to be honest. I mean, that's it. I mean, I can't really say much more about Trebek. I mean, I want to say he's the quintessential game show host.
Yeah.
I honestly want to say that. There's no other better way to put it. You know, he's entertaining enough. He's serious enough, and he just carried the right amount of charisma and weight for what you'd expect of a game show without being too corny or too serious, I guess, as well. But like just that right level. And I mean, we're talking about as well. They've recorded enough in advance earlier this year that he'll still be on screens in America until Christmas.
Yeah,
and I guess that's not a bad legacy. I read another thing today about how he, you know, obviously knowing that potentially something happened, they asked him if he wanted to record something for himself for all the years he'd done the show, and I think he didn't turn it down. I think he still said something like a 30-second thing that he did, but he didn't want to make a big deal. Like, he's like, I'm not.
It seems like him,
and it does seem like him.
He doesn't seem like someone that would make a big fuss out of something when, you know, everyone's going to know what's, you know, sort of happened. It's going to come out in the news, and it's very much like him not to make a big deal out of it.
My understanding is that the network's putting on some specials related to stuff that he's done, and showing some unshown pilots and other things that he's done in the past, which will be an interesting thing for people, especially who've grown up, and a lot of people obviously have watching him on TV, especially in America. I'd be interested. I suspect someone's probably already done it, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone's putting together like a little supercut now of all the times he's appeared in random TV shows and movies as himself.
I'd say it already exists.
Yeah, if it doesn't already exist. If it hasn't already existed, someone's putting it together, because I can think offhand a few times where he's played basically versions of himself. Sometimes he's just playing it straight and he's just him as he is on the show, and sometimes he's in on it. Sometimes it's like someone's fantasy or dream about being on Jeopardy. Sometimes it's, you know, it's he gets to be an arsehole.
As I mentioned before with the SNL connection, he even showed up as himself on an SNL skit.
Yeah, which I'm not at all surprised about either. So, yeah.
And it was of one of the skits of Jeopardy as well, so...
I mean, SNL is quite infamous for making numerous Jeopardy parodies, including like Black Jeopardy and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not at all surprised.
Where Tom Hanks is the token white guy and he's got no idea what's going on. Yeah. And there was also Ken Spears, the co-creator of Scooby-Doo. Right-roll. He had complications of Lewy body dementia.
Yeah. Now we were talking about was it? Oh, who's the other guy? Ray something. My God, my brain's gone blank. He's the other co-creator.
Yeah, I did read it,
I thought,
remember.
When we were talking at that time, I was like, I'm pretty sure the other co-creator of Scooby-Doo had died. And I think we weren't wrong, but my understanding is that there was someone else who helped create the show who worked for these guys, but these two were in charge of like the production under Hanna-Barbera that did and created Scooby-Doo. So now it's both of them, and they both died this year. So there was 3 of them involved, but 2 main co-creators, and they both died this year, which is crazy to think about. And obviously in this case neither of them have been like COVID related, so it's just been their age and
something
illness.
else has caught up to them.
So again, a sad loss. I think much like we talked about, Scooby-Doo is like another touchstone kind of thing for people in generations, and it still continues to exist. As much as we were not impressed with Scoob, I know that he was actually somewhat involved in still having, from my understanding, he was still working quite up to recent years, and even with like issues with related to the dementia, he was still trying to help. Wow! So because he was that keen on keeping the brand alive, so that's kind of cool to know. Yeah. When I was reading that earlier today, so that's pretty impressive. So not much else I can say really.
All right. We'll move on to some COVID delays and changes. Not too long a list this month, thankfully.
Jesus.
Jinx, that's another one. You got that on record too.
Deleted now.
Coming to America is now coming to Amazon Prime and skipping cinemas entirely.
I'm not the only one who made that coming to Amazon joke. Trust me, that was everywhere.
Yeah, I could imagine.
No.
I mean, this is the first I'm reading it, so I'm not surprised that joke's already been made.
Yeah, I wrote that down as soon as I saw it, and the story I read didn't have that, but within like an hour of seeing that, I saw that same joke like 15 times, and I'm wow. Well, clearly it's just such an obvious gag, but anyway. We'll see. I think it's December, I think it was the plan, so people are still really looking forward to it. Not much else to say. When more comes out, a trailer and stuff, we'll talk about it then.
Free Guy is looking likely to release on International Pinecone Appreciation Day. God, forgot about that. As both it and Kenneth Branagh's Death on the Nile take are removed from the December slate by Disney, and neither are given a new release date.
No. Yeah, I thought that would get you a chuckle.
Yeah, it did. I'd forgot about that joke in it. Or in the teaser for it.
The
teaser for the trailer.
Yeah. Coming this Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Coming this Coming this International Pinecone Appreciation
I hope
Day.
it actually is on that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I don't know if there is an actual day, but whenever it is, they just say coming this.
Someone has to make it. Surely.
Say it's like March 25th. Coming March 25th. Also, this Pinecone Appreciation Day.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan Reynolds saying
Reynolds will be all over that like a fly.
Yeah, like you might be getting really excited for International Pinecone Appreciation Day, but don't forget, Free Guy's coming out that day too.
Yeah.
Just run with that gag now.
Yeah. Or show up with a pine cone and get a free ticket or
you
something.
You said this last time.
Yeah.
I know you did.
I know I did.
But yeah, it's interesting that neither have been slated again. I think that's the most interesting part of it, is that Disney's like, let's just not even give them new dates. Let's just wait at this stage because we don't know what's going to happen. And I think that says a lot. And that also may say stuff about them putting stuff on Disney Plus later. In any case, I don't think a decision will be made until next year beforehand. I don't think we'll hear new dates. I say this and then probably tomorrow all of a sudden, Free Guy is coming out this date and Death on the Nile is coming out this date. But I'm more confident that because they haven't set a new date and there's nothing really going to be reslated before the end of the year, I think it'll be the new year before they finally do something about it.
Yeah. Ghostbusters Afterlife pushed back 4 more months to June 11th, 2021.
Yeah, so it's almost a whole year after its original date, which was supposed to be August. So yeah, another delay. Not a surprise given all the other shifts. Another move was Nia DaCosta's Candyman remake, which has been also redated now to August 27th of next year. Not exactly Halloween, but at this stage August.
It's close enough.
And so it was actually going that we're going to just do a screening here, double screening at the Hollywood for the Halloween horror thing, where they're going to play the original and this version. Then that got pulled, and then I think they ended up removing the original off the schedule. Yeah. Unfortunately. And the only thing we wanted to note on the things, and I think you noticed this, is Alita Battle Angel got a re-release to US cinemas. I think came out at the end of last month. People were kind of interested. It didn't do as well as they expected, but it didn't do badly. I think people were just mostly disappointed because obviously there's been a vocal kind of fan base, the Alita Army, as they've been noted as, which turned out in somewhat, but didn't make it. Kind of didn't make it
profitable.
I think it didn't make in the top. It only made it into the top 10 or just outside the top 10 the week it came out, re-release. I mean, which makes it slightly problematic because obviously it's not as big. But then you are still facing a pandemic, and any money it still makes from re-release is still more money it made. So, it seems to have done well in home releases and stuff like that, but just never really pulled off in cinemas. And this hasn't helped. So, fortunately.
Zack Snyder's, we talked about Zack Snyder before, his Justice League trailer pulled from online due to music rights issues. Yeah,
so the song was Hallelujah, obviously we talked about this and made a lot of jokes. I don't quite understand how it ended up being pulled for that reason. I didn't see any more about it, but but silly.
Or it was for the version of it, perhaps, or...
Maybe. Yeah, I wish I'd looked more into it, but I don't think I've seen anything else. I know it seems like such a ridiculous thing to put that massive trailer out and not have any
the rights for the music or something.
Someone disputing it, and so every copy of it's been pulled off the internet.
Oh wow!
Well, unless people copied their own versions of it, but all the ones that were officially put up have been removed.
Yeah, I guess we'll keep an eye on it and what the actual issue over it was.
They'll probably just end up releasing a new trailer with another inappropriate piece of music.
Getting to the tail end of everything now. Monster Hunter full trailer. I think I'm going to stick with my initial take of it, or my review of it. It just looks like it's another Resident Evil with Mila Jovovich. But it's kind of on a different planet somehow.
Well, only because you got assembled in the desert now.
Yeah.
The thing that I pointed out to you, which has only occurred to me when I saw the trailer, and I haven't really said to anyone, and I will have to talk to someone else I know about this. But the fact that this is a bit of a diatribe, so stick with me on this bit of a story. In the original Resident Evil, which Paul W.S. Anderson did, he avoided using the plot of the games in the movie, and the plot of the games has like these two special forces teams that work for a police called STARS, and they have like an Alpha and a Bravo team. And Bravo team goes missing, and then Alpha team in this forest, and then Alpha team has to go into the forest to find them. And in this trailer, the military group look like they're trying to find another group who they refer to as Bravo team.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, so you could have used that plot all along because you've used it for this movie, which has nothing to do with that whatsoever. There's no Bravo Alpha team in Monster Hunter.
No.
He's just got he wants like relatable military characters. The thing that bugged you and I as well was the call out to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Which I'm just like, my thing about that is like, if I go to that movie and I'm not enjoying that movie and I hear that joke, I'm just going to be like, yeah, that's a movie I could be enjoying right now.
Yeah, that's a much better movie than what I've seen so far.
It's like, I don't like it when, I don't mind movies make reference or call out a point of a movie that's relevant to a situation or a joke that actually kind of doesn't make the movie you're currently watching seem bad. But when you've got a team-based movie and they make a joke about the idea they're like Guardians of the Galaxy but not the Guardians of the Galaxy, then yeah, if that movie's not going well, I'm just going to be like, yeah, I could be watching the proper team right now, not this crap.
Yeah,
anyway.
for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to make your pointed comment? Do you feel like
we sort of pointed out that it looks like Mila Jovovich may survive this movie, like she has all the Resident Evil films.
Yeah, because the characters kind of disappear. She makes this comment about like, I've got to save all the characters.
Yeah,
like I'm going to make sure my team gets out, and then I'm like, later on you just see scenes of her with Tony Jaa's character only, and unless like her other team splintered off to somewhere, I get the feeling they're all going to get eaten by monsters.
Yeah, or something, but. I think the only way she's making it out of the film is because she's fucking the director.
I mean, they met on the first Resident Evil movie, so that's not too much of a surprise. They've made all those movies since then. And she survived that first one even without that fact. So, I guess that's to be expected. But she's the main draw, I guess, other than... Well, no, Tony Jaa didn't even get a name on that trailer, so... He did on the poster, but... Anyway,
who knows?
We talked about it earlier, but Soul got a release date moved to Disney Plus on December 25th, and so they put out a new trailer, which I really liked, except for the one thing we talked about at the end of the trailer, which is about the feeling.
The feel, and which kind of doesn't make sense.
And they slap, but they move, and then they don't feel it, but then there's a shot of them holding hands as if they could feel them holding each other's hands, which is a bit weird. But other than that, it looks very much...
They've broke their own rules.
Kind of, but I guess we got to try and work out is the idea of like the difference between explaining this to kids and not in a physical form, and making a joke too. It looks good though. Like I'm still very keen on seeing it, so I know what I'll be sitting down to see around Christmas.
I mean, Pixar, they just can't go wrong. They can and they can't, but
they don't usually. Yeah, and usually the original.
Got a pretty good track record.
Got a pretty good track record. Usually the original ideas are pretty successful, and even the ones that critically aren't seem to be commercially successful. I'm looking at you, Cars. So it's wow.
Or should that be ka-chow?
Ka-chow. Oh, wow. Sorry,
it would be. Oh, I've never thought of that.
It would be done.
Wow, I've never thought of that.
Anyway, so I'll be looking forward to that. You probably check it out as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think I'm still one. I still have to see Coco. I sat down and started watching it with Anne actually downstairs, and it was good. I liked it, but I wasn't in the mood. I got like a quarter of the way through, and I was just like, I'm gonna sit down and watch this later, and I still haven't. It's the only Pixar film I haven't seen yet, so I'll have to watch that before I watch Soul.
That's fair enough. There was also the Songbird trailer, the Michael Bay produced COVID movie we mentioned previously that no one asked for.
Yeah, so we mentioned this a few episodes ago about them. We idea of even making this movie. It's got a pretty good cast, and they managed to pull a lot of people, even if they're for small roles.
Yeah,
and cast some. I'm guessing they're relatively unknowns or little knowns at this stage in the main roles, and obviously bulked it up with some well-known actors playing some supporting characters. And the idea that I think some of these supporting characters are not going to survive very long or under certain circumstances, but still can put them in the trailers. The trailer, you jokingly was talking about a movie that you saw, like one of those kind of asylum style, like kind of preying on very basic ideas. Would you say it was COVID-21?
Yeah, it was. Funny enough, it was actually in preparation for this. I was looking for the movie titles with 21.
Yes,
and this was just at the bottom of the list, and I looked at it and I was like, really? And I looked up the description, and it's all it said so far is that it's in production, and it's like a team of scientists in Antarctica dig up some, I don't know, ancient thing or whatever it is, and they discover an ancient virus.
And then obviously, and that's the working title.
That's pretty much it.
And as soon as you started talking about COVID-21, I started chuckling because of the COVID thing in the Songbird trailer. They're calling it COVID-23.
Yeah.
Being that it's the 23rd COVID type. And it's just like, I'm just like, the thing is, I still sit at the trailer and it's like, oh, it looks okay for what it is, I guess. And but like, I guess there's two questions. Why? Who is it for? Because, but then people also point out that Contagion started rating really well. I wanted to watch that. But I think Contagion's quite a realistic looking film.
Yeah.
Whereas this is and this is no slight against it on a visual style. I guess they're going for realism, but it's more of a fantasy movie. It's a worst case scenario. It's a bit OTT. It's not something that couldn't not happen, but it seems much more far fetched than say Contagion was, where it seemed like a realistic version of an outbreak. Yeah. Have you ever seen Contagion?
I haven't. No.
Okay, but Contagion seems very realistic. It's about this person goes. There's a disease that ends up in China. It's very relevant to COVID, the way we got it, coming from China and spreading throughout the world. And the disease has a deadly factor to it, much more deadly than actual COVID, but it still spreads and propagates the same way. And it's about mishandling and the handling and bureaucracy of disease control and all that sort of stuff in it, and as well being a drama.
Yeah.
Interpersonal drama. So I can see the relevance of people watching this, but I can't see people lining up to watch this movie and go, oh, I really need to see that COVID 23 movie Songbird, because that seems relevant to my existence. Like I'm stuck in my lockdown here, 200 weeks in.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it was like 213 that they said in the movie.
In the trailer. It's
saying it's like 4.5 years.
Yeah, and the death toll's like in the millions. And it's like a worst case scenario. And it's like, who's going to be entertained with this? What's the point? So yeah. I mean, maybe there's some people out there that will enjoy it and want to see it, but I don't see that trailer and go, oh, got to go out and see that COVID movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think you do either.
Not really, no. I mean, from what you've described, Contagion, I'd much rather watch that.
I would highly recommend watching that more, and it's more relevant to the current world circumstances than that trailer portrays. I mean, yeah, sure, the end movie could be different, but I could tell you even just to watch that Contagion trailer probably would be more relevant to you watching than the trailer for that Songbird movie.
Yeah. Speaking of other sort of Lego sequels or reboots, Saved by the Bell gets a new series with a trailer that we're also not sure anyone was asking for.
Yeah, I mean, it has a few jokes and references, and I get it, but I put it in these terms, and I think it's kind of funny. We were sitting there and our flatmate was just happened to watch it, and he didn't know that it was a new series based off something existing.
Yeah.
Other than I think there was a couple of things in the trailer that basically implied that it was back or some reference, right? So he was a little bit like, oh. But like in my mind, other than the nostalgia bait of people trying to tell their kids to watch it, why is it any different than just making a new show?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can put old characters in and tie up storylines, and there's been successful versions of that. There was the Boy Meets World spin-off, Girl Meets World, for example. But it almost was its own thing. It kind of made enough sense to be its own spin-off with very minimal. This feels like it leans very much heavily on the 90s nostalgia, references to the original show, characters being much more involved perhaps than that series did. At least from what I'm aware, I didn't watch Girl Meets World, but just from the way it was promoted, it wasn't promoted the same way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's like, again, who's the audience? Why? Is the audience the people that used to watch Saved by the Bell and want to sit down and watch a teen drama now? Who are those people? And why do you need that now rather than watching something that's at your level now? Or are you that hard up for more Zach and Kelly that you need to have that in your life?
Yeah.
And then also, who's this for new people? Like, do they even care about the old series? Does it appeal on that level? And even if it does, did it need that part to it? Could you just make a teen drama that's set in a high school called Saved by the Bell, or even called something else?
Yeah, so, I think they're trying to cash in too late on I think several years ago there was the 90210 and Melrose Place sort of reboots.
Yeah, the 90210 got cancelled. The 90210 was meta though. The 90210 that I think that I saw was where the actors were playing themselves and they were part of a TV series and they came back.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't an actual continuation, or it was, but it was in the show was a continuation, but it was actually following outside of the show or something like that. I forget now, but it was slightly different, and it didn't last a season.
Okay.
But it was like, but that in itself wasn't original because it was a show, and this was the one I was trying to remember last time. I still can't remember. I didn't bother looking up. That was in the 2000s. Was it? Maybe was that called Gross Point or something Point? I keep trying to remember it, and it was like a meta show that was all about making those teen soaps that existed in the late 90s, early 2000s. and it was about the making of a teen soap show, but the soap dramas happened in real life with the actors and the network and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and that was where this 90210 thing went as well, kind of.
Okay.
So yeah, again, then the reason why it got cancelled because of exactly what's the audience? Who's this for? Who cares enough to tune in every week? Is the nostalgia strong enough? What's the point? Could you just make something different with all the same actors, or could you just make a different show that's kind of in that style but isn't the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are of a time and a place, I think. Sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, especially when there are those sorts of things.
Yeah, like some nostalgia is good, but I think now we're getting to a place where we're probably getting too much of it. It's just getting like, scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Well, I don't know if it's scraping the bottom. I don't know if it's scraping the bottom of the barrel. We are sitting in a room right now filled with, and this is no slight against you, but we're filled with stuff that's nostalgia, right, in a lot of ways, or things that exist not within a time and space, but that kind of have stuck around. So let's say Harry Potter or Star Wars, perfect examples. They're things that have continued to evolve and create new things, and they're not always stuck in nostalgia. They kind of build things out. Comic characters that have been around for eons, Batman's perfect example, keeps getting reinvented in ways that are interesting and different. But if your thing is to just bring back existing stuff in the way it was and try and update it, but still be core to that original truth and never really change beyond it, then that's when you start going, well, who's it for now?
Yeah.
Are you trying to bring in a new audience? Well, then you're going to alienate someone, right? You're going to either alienate the new audience, you're going to alienate the old audience, but you need to find a way to get both those people invested. Funny enough, we've been talking about Cobra Kai, perfect example of I think that you could bring in people that are interested. There's still enough character drama with the old characters, but they don't treat them the same. They're not the same people they were 30 years ago.
No.
But your new characters are interesting and new and interesting and can be interesting to new people watching or people who've watched in the past who've seen the Karate Kid and kind of don't know these characters that well.
And it's not just on the older characters as well. It's not like here's the old characters you know and love with a little bit of the new characters that you don't really care about. So there's enough of both of them to get you invested. And
that's not what I feel from this Saved by the Bell trailer. I mean, it might be the case. That maybe if I actually sit down and watch it, it may be actually really well balanced, and the references are just right, the right balance. But that's not what's coming across. And you're right. There's a lot of living in this nostalgia thing, and we're all guilty of it. But I think there's differences, and I think there's a way to broach it where it can be approachable for everyone, new and old, as opposed to just being for either old or new, and then asking who those audiences are. It's late, and I'm very confused about this fact, but I think I'm making sense. I think
I think you are too.
Yeah.
We'll move on to what I'm kind of excited for, mostly. Let's be honest, I'm not fooling anyone. The Lego Star Wars Holiday Special trailer.
Again, he would watch it just in case, even if he hated it, he'd still watch it.
Yeah.
You mentioned this in a previous thing because we were talking about the Advent calendar, and you said that the characters in the Advent calendar were expected to be part of the holiday special, and it definitely looks like
they are. Yeah, so there's a Poe Dameron in the Advent calendar and a Darth Vader in the Advent calendar, which have like ugly sweaters on, and they also appear in the trailer. Well, I don't think the Darth Vader does, but he probably will appear in it somewhere. But at least the Poe Dameron does. Definitely so there's that there anyway, and this holiday special, much like the original holiday special, features Life Day.
But this also deals with time travel and lots of being like Lego,
and sort of multi-universe.
Yeah, and being Lego self-referential fourth wall jokes. And, yeah, the stuff that we'd expect of like the Lego Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, and also sort of on that vein of Life Day, there's, if you open up certain windows within the Advent calendar, going back to my toy box, bear with me. If you open up several windows, several, I had to think of that, they have a different letter which represent a code which you can use in the Lego Star Wars game when it comes out next year, and the word is Life Day. So it kind of ties in nicely.
Yeah, so this was obviously all planned around knowing this thing was coming out and all marketing.
Yeah, wow. It's kind of tied into the Lego Star Wars game marketing as well, but now that that's coming out later, it's kind of
it's still going to be relevant,
but it's a little bit too late. And now, ending the way we started this episode, talking about Karate Kid.
Yeah. Well, we started with Cobra Kai. And we ended last episode with Cobra Kai. But, so you finally sat down and rewatched Karate Kid for the first time in however many years. And I rewatched it for the first time in quite a few years as well. I don't remember. I remember at some point I sat down and rewatched all three of them, and it might have been about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been a while for me anyway. I think the funny thing is, and you ended up making a post for us on our Facebook page.
Yeah, for those of you that saw that,
you'll know what we're referring to. But literally, the fact that you would go through this movie and you'd be like, oh, there's that reference to this thing, and that's that connection to that, and you start realizing that. I guess that's maybe the other thing, to kind of go back to the Saved by the Bell thing. I think the difference I see in that trailer is that when you see references to things, they almost seem a little bit overtly forced, whereas the stuff in Cobra Kai is not always constantly like, hey, you remember that thing with the thing, and the person does the thing. Like,
they're not pointing it out to you, making it obvious.
I mean, there's a couple of them, like obviously having the Halloween outfit with the skeleton is kind of like, that's kind of like the glasses and the bright fluoro top and the playing the guitar and the broom thing. Yeah, that's kind of on that same page. I'm okay with that, but there were some really overt ones in that trailer that maybe Cobra Kai would be a bit more subtle about. And it's not that they don't exist. I think it's something different. And so sitting through Karate Kid. But I think the thing that really, and this is no sliding against Cobra Kai, there's nothing you could have done about it, but it's just remembering how fucking good Pat Morita was in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, he just anchors that film. Like, I'd forgotten how good he was in that movie. And, like, we talked about it a bit while we were watching it. It's like, he wasn't going to live in that role. Like, everyone knew him from Happy Days, you know, and the character he played was, you know, very comical and very over the top. So for him to be taken as, like, this serious kind of character, and he's quite an arc in that movie, too, in some respects. He's supposed to be this just quiet, reserved kind of handyman, and it turns out that he knows karate. With his
bonsai trees.
And just exactly. But then you find out, like, the backstory of, like, his wife and child dying, and, you know, and like, he's such an important character to Daniel on so many different levels. You forget how much of an anchor he is to that movie, and the movie wouldn't work without him.
No,
like, you could have, and this is no slide against the Jaden Smith version, but I think that's it. Like, Jackie Chan is Jackie Chan, and it was really hard to watch that movie and not see Jackie Chan.
Yeah,
whereas Pat Morita is. Not to say that he wasn't well known, but he embodied that role so well that I could believe him as an actual person. Like, I believe that Mr. Miyagi existed.
And I think with the Jackie Chan one, you sort of go into that knowing of Jackie Chan's previous movies and knowing his martial arts sort of background and stunts as well. So you sort of go into, all right.
It makes sense that it's Jackie Chan, I get it, but it kind of takes you out of the movie.
Yeah, whereas with Pat Morita, you just like, okay, this, you know, medium height, older Asian man who's just a groundskeeper at a hotel. Shit, he knows karate.
Yeah, and I think it's played off really well in that scene. I mean, they kind of do that same thing in the Jackie Chan one, and it falls flat because, again, we're so, it's not Jackie Chan. We're so, it's like, we've talked about this before with Tom Cruise. I can only take him in certain roles because he does so many of these crazy stunts in movies, and his acting is of a particular style that when he tries to play, like War of the Worlds, for example, when he's trying to play the everyday man, he can't pull it off.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work because I can see him and I go, well, it's Tom Cruise and he's an action hero, and I can't believe him as an everyday man. And that's also not just him in the acting, but obviously him in his real life. And I think that's the same with Jackie Chan. I know how good he is as a performer in general, and I know who he is as a stunt person and as a martial arts performer and as a dancer and a singer, and I know all these things, and it's really hard to take him as like this average guy who just happens to know karate and looks after this kid.
Yeah.
And whereas that original movie, it was just so much more grounded. It's crazy to think about, like, just how solid that movie is as well. And I made the joke, we were talking about it, like I said, you know, it's a bit like Rocky, and then it's the director is the director of Rocky. Yeah. And you can definitely see the studios cashing in on that deal. Like, it's an underdog story and it's got karate in it, but realistically, it's about this kid who gets trained to overcome the odds and win the competition at the end. It's basically just Rocky.
Yeah,
and it really is. But it's intentionally just good enoughly different that, and again, Pat Morita, and also just having the youth difference and having it more like high school kids makes that difference. And there's just that right level of sweetness and like coming of age story and stuff, and it's definitely a movie that sometimes I think has been quite underrated, and it's not intentional. I think it's just like me, I never really give it too much thought. I've always enjoyed it, but I've never actually sat there and gone, you know what, Karate Kid's a really good movie when you think about it. You know, if Rocky didn't exist, would this be like Rocky? Like, people would go, like, that movie Karate Kid is
this would be the Rocky, so to speak.
But then I don't think it would exist without Rocky. So, you know, it's kind of a hard ask. I'd be very interested. We'll have to sit down and watch the sequels, and I need to find a copy of the Hilary Swank Next Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember that one at all. I know Pat Morita's in it. I remember she is like the granddaughter of a friend of his, I think. and she already knows, much like Daniel, knows a little bit of karate, but it's more about like but being a bit of an outsider and all that sort of stuff. And she's rebellious and kind of thing. She's a bit more different than Daniel, a bit more difficult. So yeah, I'd be interested to rewatch those, and I need to track down a copy of that fourth one. But we should sit down and watch the others at some point. Definitely.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Continue.
I was going to say, if I was to wrap up my review of The Karate Kid, I would say it's the best around. It's never going to keep me down.
You're the best.
Yep.
How long have you been waiting to throw that one out there?
A couple of minutes.
We had a discussion whether or not that song was in there, because I was getting confused because of Eye of the Tiger's not in the first Rocky, which is how the whole Rocky conversation came up, actually. And I was like, I don't think it's in this one. But that was
sort of the fighting montage.
Yeah, it's the fighting montage at the end, which of course I should have remembered because I've seen so many parodies of it. I should have remembered this. It's the other track that's in the second one. That's like more of a love theme kind of. Yeah. Which is a good song. I do like that song. But it's in the second one. But I always get that confused with the fact that everyone thinks Eye of the Tiger was in the first Rocky, but it's not. It's in the second one. But it's just so iconic. Aside from the Rocky theme, which is in the original movie, but. Anyway, I digress.
It's in all of them as well, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but specifically, it's, it's used as the montage music, whereas the Eye of the Tiger is the montage music in the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always montages. That one in Rocky. Which one is the Rocky 4? I think Rocky 3 or Rocky 4 is like the weirdest one, where like it's the one where he goes to Russia and he's like hitting meat and
that's right,
pulling tires, and he's basically doing.
See Dolph Lundgren doing all the
exercises and stuff, and it's all very 80s, but yeah, Rocky was like CrossFit bro before CrossFit bro was a thing. Let's roll some big fucking truck tires.
Yeah. Well, even Rocky had a montage.
It did. All of them had a montage, in fact. Even Karate Kid had a montage.
Yeah,
so that should be the new bit of the song.
Always fade out in a montage. We need to wrap this up.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed this episode 21. We'll be back sometime in December with 22.
Yes, and then probably a wrap. I'm really keen. We did an end of year thing last year at the start of this year, really, for last year, and I'd be keen to do another one of those. So yeah, if we can sit down and come up with some topics. It's been a very interesting year, obviously not having the movies.
No.
In cinemas past March.
Limited movies, I suppose. Movies.
But I think we kind of have worked out that there's definitely some themes to this year, and obviously it's to do more with home releases and what we've seen and so forth. So I think coming up with 5 movies for this year is going to be pretty tough. I think I might be able to stretch to it.
Yeah, you might be able to,
but
I won't.
Yeah, we need to get you watching more stuff. You just really don't. Like, it's funny, you watch stuff for work, but you never sit down and watch any movies.
I think I've said this either on air or off air before, but I just think with watching so much at work, it's just... Maybe it kind of does it to me.
Maybe we need to set you
oversaturated.
Maybe we need to set you a goal next year, like I did 2 years ago, for watching a movie for movies. Not every week, a movie at the week.
Not a movie a week
at the movies, but at least a movie frequently at home, even if it's both of us watching it.
Yeah.
Just so that we can have the stuff for us to talk about. Not that we have any lack of stuff to talk about, but also just that like you keep up to stuff, because so many times, and I keep forgetting.
I've still got a list of stuff to get through.
That's the problem. I keep doing these edits on these episodes, and I keep forgetting to write them all down. Sometimes I do, and I've ticked a few things off. But yeah, like we need to keep those in mind, because there's so many stuff that I haven't even seen as well, that I watch with you, or that I know I've seen that I know you would like. So yeah. Anyway, we're still rambling on. Yeah. So thank you again for listening. As usual, like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz stuff.
Whatever your friends do.
Yeah, friends.
Yeah, supermarket bulletin board.
That's the one. Church housey bingo.
That as well. Wherever you place stuff.
Just spam it in people's emails. I don't care. Yeah. Just something. That'd be fun.
Just don't put like Nigerian Prince as the headline or something.
Real-time Prince.
Yeah, that'll do. Real-time Prince, give us money, Fast and Furious franchise. Please. Take our Fast 10 and pass
Fast
money.
10, yeah, that's it. And give us some money, and we'll be real-time. Well, Fast and Furious presents Real-Time, brought to you by Fast and Furious.
That's the one.
We'll catch you next time.
So...